Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. So today I thought I'd work on Act 3 of Babylon Dithers. I'm pretty depressed today because Charlie Kirk was just assassinated, so that's just really devastating. I was already really not in a good mental health phase or whatever because of the young Ukrainian woman who was murdered. So I was really upset about that yesterday and this morning. Just the senseless violence and hatred people have and just how much evil is in the world is just disheartening. And then today, Charlie Kirk being murdered, it's just, really bothers me, really bothers my spirit. It's really disheartening. So much evil and violence in the world, so much hatred. And, it just makes me tired of life and just dealing with all this and just knowing there's so much evil in the world and evil people. And then to see on the internet just so many people celebrating it and supporting these people doing these awful things. And it's just beyond belief to me, and it's just so disheartening that people are like that. So, it's really hard for me to decide what to do. I really want to kind of avoid, the internet, like social media and stuff. So I thought, working on Act 3 of Babylon Dithers would give me something to do to occupy my mind. So Babylon Dithers, I am on Act 3. One thing I wanted to check, so right now I'm kind of aiming for 20 chapters per act. So that's going to kind of come into play real soon because I'm thinking of having really 3 storylines in the act. So there's that, and then pull up Google Maps. So basically for Act 3, my idea is Trevor goes from Sinjar into Syria. And I have 3 kind of storylines for him. One is Trevor goes to Camp Kate, which is located somewhere here east of this mountain range across from Latakia. Camp Kate, that is introduced in Syrian Dander. That is storyline A. Storyline B, I think, is ISIS destroying historical sites. And I think especially the town of Palmyra, maybe a focus there. And then the third storyline, I think, will be an attack on Al-Tabqa, this town here. And there's a dam somewhere around here. Let's just see, is this it? Oh, that looks like it. So yeah, there's a dam here. And okay, good. So it looks like the water does spill from this body of water into here. Because something I was curious about for that was in real life, basically there's this battle for this town and there's an air base here, maybe down there, I don't know. But there's a dam here, which is just like Act 2, which is focusing on the Mosul Dam. Here's another dam that everyone is fighting over. So there's a dam right here. And historically, ISIS actually called for a ceasefire and let engineers come in because they were worried about this dam failing, which really just seems very un-ISIS-like because they're so committed to violence and stuff. And I was kind of wondering if part of the reason why they actually wanted to save that dam is because ISIS has the town of or city of Raqqa. That is the capital of the Islamic State. And so I was wondering if the water from the dam flowed eastward. If that dam burst, Raqqa would be wiped out. So they do actually have a vested interest in making sure that dam does not fail. So that could be part of the storyline as well, where they actually have kind of a ceasefire. And Trevor, who's an engineer, he would actually have some reason to go into that dam to help make sure that dam doesn't fail. And just to get this out of the way so it doesn't need to be said, no one like the Kurds or Trevor, they're not going to consider actually blowing up that dam to wipe out Raqqa. So that's not even under consideration. No one wants this dam to fail. Okay, so what I think I'll do is I'll pretty much break this act into those 3 storylines. And since I want to have 20 chapters in the act roughly, I'll split them up between the Camp Kate storyline, which, I didn't mention, something I want to do for that is set up the Turkish-backed rebels who will wind up taking over much of Syria. So I could kind of introduce them there in that storyline where Trevor goes to Camp Kate thinking, he'll find out what he can do to help out maybe. I could actually switch it around where maybe he first goes to Al-Tabqa and he has that, and then he goes down to Palmyra, and then he goes to Camp Kate. But I could maybe switch it around later on, just thematically, if I decide for whatever reason the Camp Kate storyline would be better going last. For now, I think the Camp Kate storyline will be storyline A, storyline B will be Palmyra, storyline C will be Raqqa and Al-Tabqa. So, calculator, if I'm doing 20 chapters per act divided by 3, that would be 6 or 7 chapters per storyline, which, man, that doesn't seem like very much. So I'd really kind of have to rush things along. So I wouldn't really have time to, really build things up and stretch things along. And again, the reason why I say that is because if Act 3 is much larger than 20 chapters, then it'll just take up a big chunk of the book, and the word count of the book would be stretched out very far. Something I was considering was, should Trevor even go into Syria? Because Babylon Dithers is about Iraq and the Iraqi Kurds. So I did consider that Act 3 could be about Trevor trying to build up Kurdish support to attack Mosul, but I don't know. Part of the problem with that is what I'd want to show is Trevor's having trouble convincing the Kurds to fight, but so far we have actually seen the Kurds fight. So in Act 1, Firat Malazada, one of the characters, a Kurdish character, he takes his forces down to Baghdad. Firat Malazada is commander of the Kurdish special forces. So in Act 1, he is moving on Baghdad to save Baghdad from ISIS. In Act 2, the Kurds show up at the Mosul Dam and fight there, and then they fight their way to Sinjar. So it'd be kind of a little bit, I don't know how to say, confusing, I guess, how in Act 3 suddenly the Kurds just don't want to fight and they don't want to attack Mosul, because it's well, you guys have been fighting already. You've been fighting at Baghdad, and you've been fighting over the Mosul Dam, and you've been fighting over Sinjar, so why would they not want to attack now? Why would they not want to fight now? So inherently, I'm not sure if that really makes sense, and then just a lot of the act would be Trevor trying to get the Kurds to fight, but they don't really want to. And then a third problem is Layla Biglari, whatever her name is, the commander of the all-female Kurdish military wing. I really want Trevor and Layla to interact in Act 3. And I actually have an idea where Layla is sort of the love interest of the book. Even though Layla is kind of an older woman, she's near 50 or so. And Trevor is just maybe in his late 20s, maybe 30. So I was thinking they kind of have a relationship, because there's no other love interest for Trevor Knight in this book other than Layla. It was always my idea that Layla is the love interest of Babylon Dithers. Even when I was writing Syrian Dander and I was kind of beginning to already brainstorm about Babylon Dithers, I had already thought then in Syrian Dander that Layla would wind up being a love interest for Trevor later on. And I could have that happen in Atlantis Dislodged, the next book, but I just think it'd really be a distraction, and I don't think it'd really belong there. So I think it has to go in Babylon Dithers. And so that's just more reason for Trevor going into Syria. So I'm not exactly sure if this is the right idea that Trevor goes into Syria for Act 3, where basically 1/4 of the book isn't even set in Iraq, it's in Syria. I've explained in the previous video, though, that I don't think that's like a problem for Trevor's personality because Trevor just wants to help the Kurds against ISIS. So he doesn't care if he's doing it in Syria or in Iraq. And he's already familiar with the Syrian Kurds. So there's no reason why he'd tell them, like, no, I need to stay here in Iraq and fight for the Iraqi Kurds. As far as Trevor Knight is concerned, he doesn't know, like, this book is supposed to be, like, focusing on Iraq. So if he hears an opportunity to go into Syria and fight ISIS, he would go for that. There's no reason why he'd say, like, oh, no, the plot requires I stay in Iraq. So I'm thinking that's what I'll do. So 6 or 7 chapters in Camp Kate, 6 or 7 chapters in Palmyra, and then 6 or 7 chapters in Al-Tabqa. So a few years ago, I guess, when I was began brainstorming for Babylon Dithers, I read something about some kind of a massacre in, I think, a humanitarian camp in Syria. And I do not think it was by ISIS. I think it may have been done by other Syrian rebels, like maybe the ones who were backed by Turkey. So I looked up list of massacres in Syria to see if I could find that. This book is set right around 2014. This one's interesting. Latakia countryside massacres. Rebel groups attacked and overran army positions. Al-Nusra Front, ISIS, Jamim, whoever. This might be the ones who took over. Al-Sham was a collection of units and collections and later division in order to fight. Let's see here. Oh, here's an interesting one. Palmyra massacre, because that's something I said for, Act 2, not Act 2, but like the second storyline B, the Palmyra thing. So that may be something useful. So I'll just go ahead and open that in a tab for later reading. I thought there was something about a humanitarian camp that was attacked, because when I read that, I thought that could be something, refugee camp bombing, aerial bombardment, that is done by Russia. I don't think it was this late. I kind of want to say it may have been more like southern Syria where it occurred. Massacre of the town rebel, a suicide bombing. Darn it, I'm not really finding what I was looking for. I think this is the group that took over the country. I don't know. I don't think I need all of this, because originally my idea to do this, Camp Kate, came from just something I read. So even if I don't know the exact camp or whatever that, this was supposed to be based on, or when it happened, or where it was, or which group did it, I pretty much know just for the story that I'd like to have the Syrian rebels backed by Turkey who are going to take over, most of the country. They move down to Camp Kate and do something there. So, I guess we should just go ahead and begin writing. I wonder if I could do, can I, have these color coordinated or anything? 6 and 7 chapters? Let's see, I wonder if I can do... Nope, that changes all of them. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. What I could do is I could just do, let's see, 6, 7 chapters. Would that work? And then 8, 9, 10, 12, I don't know, just, 44. Okay, maybe that's okay. Okay, so for the first chapter of Act 3, something I was thinking is, so Trevor's going to be making his way to Camp Kate, but I think Trevor could be a little bit worried that perhaps Kate is actually there. And basically because right now, the last time Trevor saw Kate was in Autumn and Destiny, when she told him she never wants to see him again because they had a falling out. And in the next book, Arabian Dawn, Trevor quit his employment with NEMA, the National Engineering and Mechanical Agency, who established this humanitarian camp Camp Kate. So Trevor is not actually working for that company anymore, even though this camp is kind of largely autonomous now. He could be thinking, for whatever reason, he wants to go to Camp Kate. I may have to have different rationale for why he would be going there, because kind of the whole logic of him going into Syria is because the Kurds said we could use your help, in Syria. So why wouldn't he be going to Al-Tabqa or wherever? Do I need to answer that, or could I just have him going to Camp Kate? Because it's his most familiar location for Syria. And then also as a minor thing, how would he actually get there? Because he is here around Sinjar. The Kurds open up a corridor. The Americans have some kind of town up here. But how does Trevor get all the way from eastern Syria all the way to Camp Kate? This is a problem. He couldn't go up into Turkey because he's really on bad terms with Turkey. He could arguably get on some kind of military flight or something because the Americans have stuff around eastern Syria. But exactly why would they fly him to Camp Kate? That doesn't really make sense. I think it'd be too much of a problem, logically, just having Trevor suddenly going to Camp Kate. Because how does he get there? That is a problem. Maybe that does warrant him doing the stuff around Al-Tabqa instead. Because he's just, getting a ride with the Kurds. Because, maybe they're going back to fight. So maybe there's some scattered American, towns or whatever, American-held towns, or Syrian regime-held towns that are still kind of friendly with the Kurds. So maybe there's a way for the Kurds to get north of Raqqa, because that's about where the Kurds currently hold territory, is north of Raqqa. They're moving on Al-Tabqa area. So Trevor could be riding with them to this area north of Raqqa. Then it's not too long of a jump to go from there to Camp Kate, but it'd still kind of be a question of why does he do that? So should I do the Al-Tabqa scenes first and then potentially do the Palmyra scenes and then go to Camp Kate? I don't really like that, because then Act 4 is Trevor goes back to Iraq. So it doesn't make sense again if Trevor is in Camp Kate for that third storyline, that how does he get to Iraq then? Because then it's a long way to go again. So I really like that he would go to Camp Kate in the first storyline. Now, maybe what I've been doing wrong is I've been trying to think, how does he get there from Sinjar, following the Kurds? Because maybe he doesn't go with the Kurds. Maybe he actually goes back east to Erbil or whatever, and then from there he could just get on a flight from Iraq to Damascus or whatever. Probably not from Iraq to Damascus. They probably don't have flights to Syria. So he'd probably have to do something like fly down to Kuwait and then fly from Kuwait to Damascus, then fly from Damascus to Latakia, then somehow go from Latakia to Camp Kate. That is also a problem, because then he's having to go all the way down to Kuwait, all the way to Damascus, all the way to Latakia, and then all the way to Camp Kate. So I keep running into this problem. I guess it makes most sense that he just goes with the Kurds. So yeah, let's just look up Battle for Al-Tabqa Airbase is really the one I want to look at. Around August 10th, that's the perfect timing of everything, because that's pretty much when everything else is going on with the Mosul Dam and everything. Syrian Air Force launched airstrikes on Raqqa and Al-Tabqa. Okay, problem. I just looked up the Battle for Tabqa, and it apparently actually happened in 2017. And I don't really mind, mixing up the chronology of stuff. but that is really much earlier than it historically happened if I had it in 2014. So I wonder if I should not actually have it be that. Let's see, Syria by month. August, where's September? Gosh, apparently nothing happened in September. I'm thinking October 2014 might be the setting for Atlantis Dislodge, because I think that's going to be based largely on the October 7 attacks. And so even though that happened, I think in 2023, I believe, right now this is 2014. So, I mean, it happens like 9 years earlier than it should. But, this whole phase of the Trevor Knight book has been leading up to a major war for Israel. So even though that war kind of historically did not happen for like 9 years later, I'm not going to have Trevor wait 9 years just so it, occurs when it historically did. So it'd just be October of 2014, which kind of defeats my whole purpose of saying that the Battle for Al-Tabqa doesn't happen till 2014? I thought I said 2017. Oh, that's the airbase. Battle Al-Tabqa Dam raid. So yeah, this is different. So that is 2017. I guess it does make sense because, I mean, part of what I want to have happen in Act 3 is, the Kurds are closing in on Raqqa. And I do like that idea of ISIS wants to save this dam because, if it gets wiped out, Raqqa would be devastated. So I like that there's a potential for a ceasefire there between... Ooh, I just thought of something. Trevor actually is going to leave in Act 3. He's going to go back to Iraq. So maybe that ceasefire deal over the dam is actually like the final thing that happens for Act 3, because it'd kind of be a question then. I've kind of been wondering, why exactly does Trevor return to Iraq? I know he returns because of the Iraqi referendum, the Kurds push for independence. But why would Trevor go to Iraq for that? Like, if the Kurds are closing in on Raqqa, why would Trevor then just be like, oh, well, screw you guys, I got to go to Iraq because the Iraqi Kurds are voting for independence. So I got to go, into Iraq, and I got to check that out, and I want to help them if I can. Trevor's main focus would be, if the Kurds are closing in on Raqqa, Trevor would want to join them. So how would I get him to go out of Syria into Iraq? It would make sense if there's a ceasefire over that dam. So that basically halts operations against ISIS entirely. And it would also make sense that at the end of Babylon Dithers, Trevor goes back to Syria. That could happen because maybe that ceasefire is broken, that ceasefire ends, so they're back at war, so the Kurds are pushing on Raqqa again. So I think that makes sense that in Act 3, there's this fight over this dam, and then ISIS is like, hey, let's have a ceasefire, let's make sure this dam doesn't blow up or anything. And so Trevor and stuff goes there to make sure the dam is okay. And then the ceasefire kind of actually holds, so there's not as much for Trevor to do in Syria. Then he hears about the stuff in Iraq with the referendum. So then Trevor can be like, okay, well, since things are pretty quiet here right now in Syria, I'm going to go into Iraq and see what's going on with that referendum. So that does make sense for helping Trevor to get out of Syria and go back to Iraq. There is a ceasefire in Syria over this Al-Tabqa dam. And it's sort of interesting then that instead of this Act 3 leading up to like a climactic battle, there's actually a ceasefire. So I think it is okay that Al-Tabqa is part of the plot, even though historically that didn't happen for 3 more years. So I could just have it be where at the end of Act 2, Trevor goes with the Kurds and they just kind of have their route that gets them, like maybe they go up here along this road and like, near Cobain. So maybe they're like right up to here now. So yeah, maybe like the Kurdish front lines are right here. But then why would he leave? Potentially, since Camp Kate is a humanitarian camp, maybe they have some refugees that they need to like get out of the area. So maybe they want to take them to Camp Kate. And since Trevor has familiarity with that, he could be like, okay, well, I know the way. I could take them there. Would that be good? I think that is okay. I don't know. So I'll just write this. I could fill in details later and decide like, no, maybe it's this town instead of that town or whatever. So those are really just small details. So Act 3, I guess the first chapter would be Trevor follows the Kurds into Syria to the front lines. I'll just say between Cobain and Raqqa. I definitely do not want to like create several more chapters because I only have 6 or 7 chapters to play around with. So I kind of need to squeeze things in. So Trevor follows the Kurds into Syria. Then I could say a number of refugees need to be taken to Camp Kate. And Trevor volunteers to, I'll say accompany, just because it makes me sound smarter than saying take. I can use big words. Trevor volunteers to accompany them. I was going to say something else, then I joked about big words. He volunteers to accompany them. I would kind of like to set something more up, like what happens when he gets there. Like, does he meet anyone? I don't have any other Kurdish fighters or anything that he could like reacquaint himself with. Pretty much Layla's the only, I think, Kurdish fighter that's named in the series. So there's no like other Kurdish friend or whatever that Trevor could bump into or meet or whatever. Then I should switch to a different character. So I can always change details later, but since I want to have the first storyline about the Syrian group who's going to wind up taking over, the Turkish-backed group, maybe they could be doing something around here. So maybe they have some kind of a massacre somewhere. Shoot, but I don't know because does that make them like too ominous right from the get-go that the first time you meet this Turkish-backed rebel group, they're doing a massacre? So it's like really clear, like, uh-oh, these are bad guys. There's going to be a conflict between these guys. Maybe I'll do something else. Like maybe it's them battling ISIS or whatever. So this Palmyra thing, I don't need this right now. So I read something about conflict between, is it Al-Nusra Front? I think they are kind of the people who become, let's see, does it say names? Oh, here it is. It's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. So, on 2017, violent clashes with al-Sham and other rebel groups. Gosh, all these different groups and everything merged with 4 other groups to form Hayat al-Sham, a new Sunni Islamist militant group. Okay, anyway, I might have it be a fictional name other than any of this. And I'll probably name it like after the actual commander of this group or whatever. Okay, I think I'm making this more complex than it needs to be. So basically I know I want to have the Turkish-backed Syrian group who takes over. They're going to be the focus of this first storyline. I'm going to probably give them a fictional name. And then there's all these other groups as well, which I'll probably give fictional names as well. Maybe. I don't know. I don't even know if it's like worth coming up with fictional names because there's so many different actual groups. So, I mean, there's anything I could think of, like, the Army of Conquest. If I think like, okay, the Army of the Holy Warriors or something, or, God's Army or whatever, like any kind of rebel group name I could think of probably already exists. But anyway, that's not important right now. But yeah, I'm probably just overcomplicating things. So basically what I know is I want to have the Turkish-backed Syrian group, set them up. But at the same time, there's all these other Syrian groups. And so what happened historically, even though this is not quite like at the same time, like here you see 2017. So again, it's set like 3 years later. Basically, it says somewhere that the reason this group formed, like the HTS, it formed, several groups formed to become this HTS group. So that's basically all I need to show. So what I could do is, for this next chapter, just show the formation of that group. So I don't know where exactly. I mean, that could be a detail I just fill in later. For this next chapter, since I want to switch, characters and all that, not follow up a Trevor chapter with another Trevor chapter, I could just do, I don't know how exactly to say this, but in a meeting with numerous Syrian rebel groups, the groups decide to unite into one group, which becomes the main Turkish-backed rebel group that will eventually take over Syria. So yeah, I'll introduce like who leads that group and any of those characters who are important in this like storyline. I could introduce them here. Again, you could see how there's just not much time here. I mean, it's already like 5-6 chapters remaining before I need to finish up this storyline. So the next thing I wanted to do is actually, since Trevor is going to Camp Kate, I think he would be worried that Kate would actually be there. So I had the idea that he calls Alfred Russell to ask him, like, does he know where Kate is? Because he doesn't want to show up at Camp Kate and see Kate there, because Kate said, she never wants to see him again. So Trevor is actually kind of honoring that, He understands it's probably not a good idea to see her. So he calls Alfred to say, like, hey, do you know where Kate is? I'm thinking of going to Camp Kate and want to make sure I don't bump into her. So Alfred right now is in Israel, I think, and Alfred's going to be there in Atlantis Dislodge. When Hamas does the October 7th terrorist attack, they are going to take Alfred hostage. So Alfred is already in Israel. And so what I thought, when Trevor calls Alfred, what if Kate actually answers? So what if Kate is helping Alfred with his work, and so Kate answers the phone, and Trevor could just hang up, because he knows not to talk to Kate. Or alternatively, he could kind of disguise his voice and ask if Alfred is there. I think that makes more sense. What I was originally thinking was maybe he just hangs up, and for a moment I thought Trevor could think, why is Kate answering Alfred's phone? Because would he wonder, like, oh my gosh, is Alfred and Kate, are they actually dating now? And so would he be jealous about that or whatever? But I don't think that makes sense, because Trevor would know that Alfred is supposed to be dating Tugchi, the character from Ottoman Destiny. So I think Trevor would kind of know that, even though Kate answers the phone, she is likely not suddenly dating Alfred. He might wonder that, but I don't think he would be so suspicious that he would like immediately hang up. And then my idea was he could call like the NEMA headquarters in McLean, and like first he could call this guy Derek Burton, who is sort of like in charge of all the company's jobs, like keeping track of everything, communicating with all the different people around the world, doing all these jobs. And then I thought maybe he calls Derek Burton, but a woman answers, like a new hire, because it's always kind of a bit mysterious that whenever someone calls for Derek Burton, he's always there. He's always at work, even despite like the time zone differences. So, like, does this guy ever sleep? So, my idea was Trevor calls him and someone else answers, a woman answers. So then I could kind of introduce that woman. And then I was thinking it'd be awkward if, this other woman answers, where this guy calls and basically says, like, hey, I'm trying to find out where Kate Creed is or whatever. If a different woman answers the phone and she may not know Trevor, she may not want to give that information. I mean, that could be like confidential information. Like, I don't know who you are, sir. And, Trevor, she could find out, Trevor doesn't work there or whatever. But anyway, this is just getting way too detailed. So then what I was going to think, well, then maybe after that, like maybe Trevor doesn't have any progress with her. He can't have any headway with her. So maybe then he calls his boss, Samuel Decker, and asks Samuel Decker, hey, where is Kate Creed? Is she at Camp Kate? That is all a ton of stuff to happen. And, I can only have so many chapters and so many words. So I think what can happen, in fact, I guess I'll just write this now, is Trevor calls, maybe I'll just say, while in Aleppo, question mark, because Trevor is, riding with the Kurds, taking like the humanitarian convoy or whatever to Camp Kate. So I was going to have Trevor, how does he make this call? Does he do it while driving? Well, I thought maybe while they're in Aleppo or something, maybe fueling up or something, he could make this call. So while in Aleppo, I'll just actually say right now, while in Aleppo fueling up the convoy, Trevor calls Alfred to inquire where Kate may be, to check that she isn't in Camp Kate. I don't really need all that because I already know I would have that. That's why he would call. Kate answers. Then I'll just say, gosh, why is this so difficult to think? Changing his voice, Trevor asks for Alfred. There's more to the scene I have. So, like, when Alfred gets on the phone, Trevor would say, like, don't let Kate know it's me. And then Alfred would say, like, hey, Frank, what's going on? And then Trevor's like, where are you? Are you in Israel? And basically Trevor will let him know that he is calling, why he was calling. So yeah, I don't want to like write all that. Changing his voice, Trevor asks for Alfred and confirms that Kate is in Israel and not about to go to Camp Kate. So that way, the way is clear. Do I need anything else in that chapter? I don't really think that would be enough for like, a real full chapter. That would probably be close to 2 pages. So do I just have Trevor continues on to Camp Kate? Gosh, this is really feeling, like so, oh, there's Nibbler, my baby. This is seeming like it's going to really be flying by. Like, I only have 5 chapters left and I already need to wrap up this storyline with Camp Kate. So basically I'm wondering the Syrian rebels, the new group, why they would move on Camp Kate. because my idea was there was that one humanitarian camp. I wish I knew where it was, somewhere in Syria. I read something about how some military group, rebel group, whatever, like took over a humanitarian camp, and there was like a battle for a couple days at the humanitarian camp. And so I wish I had more about that. But yeah, so instead of like having Trevor arrive at camp, let's see here. Should I actually have it be where, the Turkish group actually takes over Camp Kate? So when Trevor gets there with the humanitarian convoy, that Camp Kate is already in the hands of this other group? Let's see here. I'm not even sure exactly how I want to do this whole scene. So for now, I'll just go ahead and say it. So I'll just say Syrian rebel group moves on Camp Kate. Maybe not. I don't want to have a back-to-back Trevor chapter, although I could have him arrive in Camp Kate at the end of the previous chapter, and that may make sense since I do have to hurry things along. How far is Aleppo? Where's Aleppo? In the previous video I kept losing Mosul, now I'm losing Aleppo. Oh, it's way over there. So Camp Kate is somewhere down there, so that is probably an hour and a half or so away. So yeah, I guess that could work, a couple hours. So for now, I'll just kind of assume it's in this act or chapter. Trevor continues on to Camp Kate and arrives there. And then the next chapter could be Syrian rebel group moves into Camp Kate. Then I'm thinking they might start doing some massacres. So maybe this group, they're a bunch of radical groups, they're a collection of radical, Islamist groups and stuff. So these aren't good people. Maybe there's different groups or different peoples in Camp Kate that they do not like. So Camp Kate has a lot of different minorities. So I mean, there'd be Kurds. There could also be like Druzi, who are like mainly in the south. But why would they really be at Camp Kate? Maybe it's just, they've fled north because maybe they're like sort of going to Turkey and into Europe and stuff. So Camp Kate is kind of a natural stopping point for a lot of people. So the Syrian group, they do not like the Druzi people. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. There may also be like Assyrians, and there could also be Kurds. There could be like some Yazidis maybe. There could be other minorities that I don't know about. There could also be the Alawites. The Alawites are sort of a denomination. I think they're sort of a branch of Shia Islam. And I haven't said yet that Syria, their president, is a Shia Muslim. So he's kind of friendly with Iran. And so he's actually, I think he might be an Alawite. And so the Alawites are kind of a denomination of the Shia Muslims. So this group, this Turkish-backed group, is mostly Sunni Muslims. So the Sunni Muslims are kind of coming down. And for this humanitarian camp, they basically want to kill anyone who isn't Sunni. So any kind of Kurds, any kind of Assyrians, any kind of Druzi, any kind of Christians, any kind of Kurds, whatever. So, Syrian rebel group moves into Camp Kate and could begin exterminating any non-Sunnis there. So, I've been talking in the previous video, like in Act 1, there's a hallway scene where Trevor kind of decides like he doesn't want to be a soldier. And in Act 2, he doesn't really commit to fighting as well, even though he does do something at the Mosul Dam. He does shoot one of the ISIS fighters. And in Sinjar, he may kind of injure a ISIS fighter, but at this point, Trevor is not yet a combatant, and that's part of why he goes to Camp Kate, is because Camp Kate is a humanitarian camp. So instead of going on to Raqqa, to push against ISIS, Trevor is doing this humanitarian mission, delivering refugees to Camp Kate. And then when he gets there, this rebel group starts killing people. So it could be there where Trevor kind of begins a resistance. So again, this all feels very rushed, but I just have to hurry this along. So I kind of want to add another chapter or two, because I don't know if this would actually kind of like get near the end, but Trevor begins to resist the rebels, and I don't want to say like mount an uprising necessarily, because that's not quite right. Let's see, part of the problem is it's not like they have any weapons or anything. These are not soldiers. He came in bringing these refugees, so they may not have any weapons. So if they do fight back, they'll need to do it like kind of begin stealthily or whatever, where they're going to need to take down some of these fighters quietly and get some guns and stuff. So Trevor begins to resist the rebels. I just don't think there's any choice for him. So Trevor begins to resist the rebels, and after stealthily taking down some fighters, begins to arm a resistance. I kind of think some other chapter should happen after that. Well, some other chapter does have to happen. But what I'm saying is I'm kind of thinking, of switching, to some different storyline or different character or whatever, not just another Trevor chapter. And I don't really necessarily think I want to switch to, like the Syrian rebel commander chapter exactly. Is there anyone else who would be in the area? I don't think they're going to get any help. So I think this is largely just like a self-contained thing. So it's not like, Syrian military forces are going to come up and help or anything. I think they're pretty much on their own. William Barrett is out of the book. The satire force is not in the area. The Kurds are more here around between Kobane and Raqqa, so they're not in the area. I could maybe switch to something with the Turks. Or what? I don't know. Let's see, how many chapters do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I said each chapter should have 6 or 7 chapters. So, if I was to have one more chapter, that'd be 6, which would be kind of the limit, 6 or 7 chapters. So this chapter should probably not be there. So essentially, if this would be like another conclusions chapter, then this chapter would kind of be the I guess a battle for Camp Kate ensues, and then conclusions. That seems so rushed though, but I think it's okay. I think the way this goes, Trevor follows the Kurds into Syria. They're located somewhere between Kobane and Raqqa. Maybe the reason Trevor leaves them is because they are not ready yet for the offensive, but they do have all these, villagers and stuff, all these refugees who need to get taken out of the area before the battle commences. So Trevor agrees to take them to Camp Kate because he knows the area and there's nothing going on right now. So it's not like he's leaving in the middle of fighting because, Trevor, he wants to help the Kurds. So it didn't really make sense why he would want to leave them. Maybe they're not doing anything against the Kurds or against ISIS for a few days. So maybe he's like, well, we need to get these people out of the area. So he agrees to drive them. And then I cut to a chapter where we see this Syrian group forming. And then while in Aleppo or wherever on the way to Camp Kate, Trevor calls Alfred Russell. And that'll kind of set up, again, that Alfred is in Israel and also that Kate is there. And it'll like remind readers who have been reading the series that Kate and Trevor are not getting along. And it'll also give a way for Kate to actually appear in the book, which I like. She does appear briefly in Arabian Dawn, but she doesn't see Trevor. Trevor doesn't see her. So I like having her appear in this book as well, even though it's pretty minor. I actually have an idea for later where she does appear for the Palmyra storyline as well. And then, he talks to Alfred and whatever, just make sure she's not there. And then he continues on to Camp Kate, and then Syrian rebel group moves into Camp Kate. So Trevor first arrives in Camp Kate, maybe, and then like shortly after, this rebel group arrives as well. And then they could begin like sorting people out, sorting all the Sunnis and non-Sunnis. And Trevor could kind of make himself scarce. And then he could kind of pick off some fighters just one by one, whatever. And again, Trevor knows about Camp Kate, so he kind of knows the area a little bit more. So even though it's, not a confusing area, I mean, it's just tents and stuff. He could take down a few fighters and gather some weapons and stuff, and then mount a resistance, and then a battle for Camp Kate ensues. And I definitely will not want to kill off like the main Syrian rebel commander, because he's probably going to take over the country. So he'll probably be like, the next president is one of these rebels. So I don't know who he'll be, but he's definitely going to survive. But there could also be some other, rebel commander guy that Trevor could, have a fight with. And so anyway, a battle for Camp Kate ensues, and then just conclusions. Wrap up that little storyline. Okay, so that is storyline A, which is the Camp Kate storyline. So I could kind of link those up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll just add in another chapter here. So yeah, 7 chapters, so that's good. So now we move on to storyline B, which is Palmyra, I think. So, Palmyra Massacre. I don't know if I'm actually going to have that like lead off the storyline or after. This is really weird. I don't know if this is like a typo or what, but on the evening of October 17th, 5 from the jail in Hannibal, Missouri. Like, what? That just doesn't make any sense. Oh, Palmyra Massacre. Oh, so I'm an idiot. So I thought the Palmyra Massacre was something for the Syrian Civil War. No, this is set in 1862. This is a American Civil War thing. So why was this here? I swear I saw this like linked in the like Syrian Civil War chapter or whatever. I swear, because where did I find this? List of massacres in Syria, maybe? And then I thought Palmyra Massacre. But then when you click it, does it go to this thing? Oh no, that's the right thing. So why did it... That's weird. Palmyra. Am I spelling it differently? Palmyra. Massacre. Huh. Weird. Anyway, so yeah, there's apparently 2 different Palmyra massacres. Now I'm kind of curious what that other Palmyra massacre was. Anyway, let's see. I know this is set, this is like a year later. So, I mean, that's fine. Never mind the chronology of everything. ISIS captures Palmyra. So, yeah, I think this is something that would actually take place like at the end of the storyline. And that would also make sense, like, it would be a natural way for Trevor to leave because ISIS takes over and they could begin doing the massacre. What I think I would like to do is actually switch characters here, since, all this stuff has been dealing with Trevor. I think it'd be good if we switched things up a bit, So what I was thinking of doing, the way to introduce the Palmyra storyline, was I have a couple characters named Ariel Geller and Schuler Dongan, who originally, very early on in the series when I first made it, the first book was Colombian Death, they appeared, and then they appeared in every single Trevor Knight book. And then German Derelict was the 14th Trevor Knight book I began working on, and German Derelict wound up becoming the first Trevor Knight book I published. But I don't want to get into that. That's just, I could be going on way too much about this. But anyway, in Ottoman Destiny, I finally actually introduced these characters, Ariel Geller and Schuler Dongan. They were originally going to be major characters throughout the Trevor Knight series. And I wrote, now I'm already talking about it, but oh well. When I wrote German Derelict, I kind of wrote German Derelict as a prequel to the Trevor Knight series, because again, German Derelict was the 14th book or something that I thought of. So I thought, German Derelict would be a prequel to all the other Trevor Knight books I'd written, kind of setting things up. So I did not have Ariel and Schuler in that book. And then the next book I wrote was Egyptian Demise, but for whatever reason, I didn't introduce Ariel and Schuler in that book either. And then in Syrian Dander, I was going to introduce them, but I never got around to it. And so then for Ottoman Destiny, I kind of at last decided I need to work Ariel and Schuler into the series at last, because they need to appear in Atlantis Dislodged. And kind of at the time, when I was starting on Ottoman Destiny, I wasn't sure if the next book would actually be Atlantis Dislodged. So I kind of had an idea a little bit for a book set in Saudi Arabia, but I really wasn't sure. And Babylon Dithers wasn't too much of an idea then. So I was like, okay, well, I need to have Ariel and Schuler because they may appear in the next book if the next book is Atlantis Dislodged. So anyway, I introduced in Ottoman Destiny Ariel and Schuler. They appear briefly in Arabian Dawn, so I want to get them in the story again. So my idea was Ariel and Schuler are both historians, and they're kind of going around the world to all different architectural or archaeological sites. And what usually happens is they tend to have some kind of a major discovery. I don't really think I'll do that for this book, though. And also it doesn't make sense for this book because they have kind of another plan, sort of. I mean, their reason for being in Syria is actually makes sense within the story, which I'll get into in a minute here. But anyway, so my idea was Ariel and Schuler could be potentially in Palmyra, and what was really going on historically. I don't want to pull up the pages about it, but how I mentioned ISIS in the previous video, ISIS was demolishing a lot of historical sites. Well, I was reading up on it, and one of the things I read about was that in Palmyra and other places, there were groups of historians who were basically cataloging the area. So what they would do for Palmyra is they would take 3D camera images of all the archaeological sites. So that way they knew that if ISIS destroyed it, they could still potentially rebuild these sites with all these 3D printing and everything, 3D cameras. So they would know exactly how the rock is shaped and everything, so they could get it exactly as it was. So what I was going to do was have them work with Trevor, Ariel, and Schuler. So I think they're in Palmyra, but how would they actually get in contact with Trevor? Because they are not really necessarily friends or anything. So I mean, it's not when they're going through all these problems or whatever, trying to document all these historical sites before ISIS blows them up. It's not like they would call Trevor and say like, hey, we need you in Palmyra. They're not friends like that so much. Usually they kind of meet Trevor sort of by coincidence, like act of God coincidence. Like in Arabian Dawn, basically Trevor is just in the town when they, basically drive by, like right by where he is. And he just saw them in Ottoman Destiny, and then he sees them again, like out of the blue, out of nowhere in Saudi Arabia. So I'd kind of like if just the same way, Trevor is just driving along or whatever and just comes upon Ariel and Schuler. It's just like, you guys again? But I don't think that would work because, Palmyra is so far away from Camp Kate. Why would Trevor go down there? Why would they go up to Camp Kate? There'd be no reason for that. They could arguably, like, be in Damascus. Maybe they're in Damascus wanting to go to Palmyra. But again, how would they bump into Trevor? Unless after the Camp Kate stuff, Trevor could go down to Damascus and bump into them there. But the problem is, why would he do that? Why would he go down to Damascus? Trevor is probably wanting to reunite with the Kurds to, maybe push on against Raqqa, so he would probably want to head the other way. Unless they're in Aleppo, because there are presumably archaeological sites in Aleppo. So maybe they're trying to save those. And so Trevor is returning from Camp Kate to where, the Kurds are between Kobane and Raqqa. And so maybe he's passing through Aleppo and he sees Ariel and Schuler there. And then they could tell him like, hey, we're thinking of heading down to Palmyra. But I don't know, because why would Trevor really decide like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll go help you guys out there? Because Trevor would kind of want to go back and help against ISIS. They could talk him into going, though, and just saying like, hey, we need to preserve these historical sites. But even though Trevor would sympathize with that, why would he really want to go with them? And why would they really ask him to go? They could just say like, we could probably use you, like just knowing their like penchant or whatever, their tendency to run into trouble. They could just kind of say like, well, we'll probably run into trouble down there. So it'd probably be best if we had you along with us. But I don't know. I think that's kind of a flimsy excuse for Trevor to decide like, okay, I'll head down there with you. Is there any way else to do it? Would there be any other characters I could have? Maybe there's just a Ariel and Schuler in some town up here and he could come upon them. But why would he go down to Palmyra? Potentially Trevor could just say like, maybe he just kind of figures like, okay, well, bumping into you two again is probably sort of like an act of God. So, apparently I'm just fated to follow you guys around. So if you're heading to Palmyra, then I guess I'll go with you. But I don't know. That just sounds really, far-fetched and ridiculous. Is there a better way to have him go down there? There's not many chapters I'd have. Should I reverse engineer it? I might go ahead and reverse engineer the book. So let's just say chapter 52 here is ISIS takes over Palmyra. Then would I say like and begins doing massacres? Because that seemed like basically what I want to get at it here is, Trevor's already leaving. Trevor may be going up to Raqqa or, to begin the offensive there. So if there's massacres going on in Palmyra, why would Trevor just, immediately walk away from that? Even though I think he'd probably have to because, he doesn't have an army with him. The Kurds are way up here. The Syrian military, I think, is probably beginning to attack like Al-Tabqa. So the Syrian military is not helping out. So, maybe ISIS is just attacking and they just have to go. Maybe they could get some civilians and stuff away. But anyway, what I was basically getting at here, to reverse engineer the book, ISIS takes over Palmyra. I don't think I need to have any more description what they do there. Maybe I'm actually going to put, what happened? I'm going to put that at that chapter. Oh my gosh, so many things are happening. ISIS takes over Palmyra, and then I wanted to have a chapter where I guess I'd have to have it here. Maybe it would have to be its own chapter, so I'll just have another chapter. ISIS takes over Palmyra. Then the next chapter, my idea is Ariel and Schuyler base. I'll just write it down. Ariel and Schuyler. My idea is they give some kind of a conference or something where they're telling the academic community that, ISIS is attacking all these historical sites, but here is what we are doing. We are working to preserve all this stuff. We are working to film, all these sites and document all these sites and stuff. Maybe potentially could that actually happen in Aleppo? Maybe Trevor meets them there and from there they could move down? Because I'm just kind of thinking I don't know, thematically, if I have this scene at the end, it'd kind of seem a little bit out of place. But I'll just continue writing it. Maybe I'll put it somewhere in a different chapter. Ariel and Schuyler have an academic, can I say symposium? I've just always wanted to use symposium in a sentence. Ariel and Schuyler have an academic symposium talking about ISIS's destruction of historical sites. Wow, I can't believe I spelled historical right. And how they are working to document and photograph sites before ISIS destroys them so that the sites might be preserved through 3D printing, etc. And then I was going to say that I thought it'd be cool if they might be let's see here. Trevor knows Kate is in Israel. What I was thinking is if they have the conference or whatever, where Trevor could actually appear in the conference, maybe he's one of the speakers and talking about what ISIS is doing. So Trevor has been all around Iraq and Syria, so he could tell the people at the symposium or whatever that what ISIS is doing from his own things he's witnessed. And Kate could see him. Kate could be watching that conference or whatever, because Kate loves history and she loves archaeology and stuff. So Kate would be interested in that, and Kate would be pissed off that ISIS is doing this. So she could see Trevor in that meeting or conference or whatever, whether Trevor is there in person or he could be appearing through television or whatever, through a live stream or whatever. And so kind of my idea was Kate would just walk out probably. But it's sort of a question is if Kate is in Israel, why would she leave? Where would that be? Why would she leave just for this symposium thing? I was going to say it makes sense if the symposium is actually in Israel. I was going to say Trevor appears, on TV or whatever. What I was going to say was if the conference is in Israel and Trevor knows Kate is in Israel, I don't think he would go to Israel, because Trevor is trying to make sure, Kate doesn't see him or whatever. So I think part of him calling Alfred is to make sure okay, Kate is in Israel. Okay, I am not going anywhere near Israel. I could have it be where maybe Trevor actually does want to see her, so he does actually go there, kind of hoping maybe he sees her because he really likes Kate and he wants to, reunite with her, or at least let her know that he feels bad about how stuff worked out. But I don't think Trevor would do that at all. I mean, I just don't like it for his character. I think it's much better that Trevor is trying to comply with Kate's desire to never see him again. So, maybe... Oh! I need to have Ariel and Schuler in Israel so they could go to Israel. That could be where they have their conference, whatever. And Trevor appears through broadcast. So maybe Trevor is back up here with the Kurds and he appears like on camera or whatever. So that definitely does work out because I need to have Ariel and Schuler in Israel. That is like vital for Atlantis Dislodged. And so that would set up why Ariel and Schuler are in Israel. So ISIS takes over Palmyra. Ariel and Schuler have an academic symposium in Jerusalem. Jerusalem. It could also be Tel Aviv. I may change that eventually, but for now, should I just say Israel in Israel? I don't want to pigeonhole myself into having it have to be Jerusalem. Trevor appears via whatever, I'll just say camera. Kate attends the conference, sees Trevor, and walks out. So yeah, that I think is real good. So that's another way for Kate to actually appear. So maybe like this whole chapter would actually be from Kate's perspective. Has Kate met Ariel and Schuler? I do not think so. Let's see. Let me kind of run it through. Kate was like hanging out with Gokhan in Autumn and Destiny. So I don't think she would have ever met Ariel and Schuler. Kate does not meet them in Saudi Arabia either. So no, Kate has never met Ariel and Schuler. Anyway, so, she could be attending this conference. She doesn't know Ariel and Schuler, but then she sees Trevor and she's just like, oh God, it's Trevor. Damn it. And so she leaves. Okay, so ISIS takes over Palmyra, kind of reverse engineering the book. So the chapter that would come before that, would it just be Trevor, Ariel, and Schuler work to document the sites in Palmyra? Ooh. The result of the offense is ISIS has 50% control of Syria. Oh, military's redeployment. I can't speak. ISIS took advantage of the military's redeployment the day before to Idlib, where ongoing fighting was taking place. Where is Idlib? I should know this. I wrote a whole book about the Syrian Civil War. Oh, okay. So this is like exactly in the area for Camp Kate. So maybe that's how I actually set it up is, should I have it be conclusions? Let's see. I don't know exactly where this could fit in. But what I'm thinking is, since it said that, the Syrian military could have forces in Palmyra, and then they could decide, oh, this Syrian rebel group is taking over all of the north here, and like Camp Kate and all that. So they could move, the Syrian military could move that away, and then ISIS could be like, oh, Palmyra is, emptied of troops. We can attack there. So that could kind of be why they attack. So this makes sense. The Syrian regime, they take their forces to the northwest and ISIS jumps in. I'll just write in, ISIS takes over Palmyra, which had been emptied of Syrian regime forces who departed the area to defend against the rebel groups to the northwest. And then I'll just type in Camp Kate. So Palmyra is ripe for the plucking. I could say that could be the reason why Ariel and Schuler want to go down there, especially because maybe how would they hear about that, though? If the Syrian regime is moving forces, how would Ariel and Schuler, like if they're in Aleppo or whatever, how would they know that Palmyra is stripped of its forces and that ISIS may be attacking? Maybe potentially they're in Damascus or something and they hear about it. But again, how would they meet Trevor? Trevor would be going up here to Aleppo to rejoin the Kurds. So I think Ariel and Schuler have to be in Aleppo, and that's where he sees them. Maybe Trevor could mention something like, why would he mention that though, that the Syrian regime is pulling forces from Palmyra to reinforce Camp Kate? I mean, that would be very much just like plot. I don't know how to say. Trevor just explaining the plot to readers. Like if he was to tell Ariel and Schuler, like, oh, the place I just left, the Syrian military is sending forces there from Palmyra. And then, like, if Schuler Dongan was to say, like, oh, Palmyra is undefended, we better go down there because ISIS may attack. That just sounds very far-fetched and just very forced. It probably is best if Ariel and Schuler, could they already be in Palmyra and they could see that the Syrian military is leaving? And so why would they find Trevor? How would they find Trevor? Okay, maybe I'm getting things backwards here. Instead of going like up to Aleppo, because then that would be like a lot of way for Trevor to backtrack. I mean, going from Aleppo to Palmyra is a long way. That's a long way out of his way. This town Hama or whatever, that is actually close to Camp Kate. Camp Kate is located somewhere right around here. It's a fictional location, but that is close to Hama. And I think there's a lot of like ancient, like Crusader castles and stuff, which, that'd be exactly the type of thing ISIS would want to destroy, ancient Crusader castles and stuff, a mark of the like Christian occupation of Syria and stuff. So maybe Ariel and Schuler are in Hama, like documenting the castles and stuff, and Trevor, he could be doing all this stuff around Camp Kate. And so now I have Trevor within close proximity of Ariel and Schuler, but how do they actually meet? Who goes where? Why would they go up to Camp Kate, or why would Trevor go down to Hama? Trevor is probably wanting to go back northeast and rejoin the Kurds. So I'd need to find some reason for either him to go towards Hama or for Ariel and Schuler to go up and see Trevor. Yeah, let's go back to Hama. Is there anything Syrian Civil War, Hama offensive, military offensive lost by Syrian? No. Oh, unless, maybe, let's see, a battle for Camp Kate ensues. That does not necessarily have to be a victory. Maybe Trevor can't go north. Oh, God, what was I thinking? He can't go north because the Syrian rebel group is all in this area. So he can't just drive north and return to the Kurds because that, rebel group is all in this area. So they could be moving down. So they could actually like win that battle at Camp Kate. They could kind of take it over. So maybe Trevor could they fight back some, but there's just more and more of the army coming, more of that rebel group coming. So Trevor just has to get those refugees out of Camp Kate. And so where would he go? Maybe he can't go to Latakia, like maybe the rebels are already got that area locked down. So the only way for him to go is to Hama. So maybe he's thinking, I'll take those people to Hama or Homs or even down toward Damascus, And at this point, those people would definitely be friendly because the rebels are more Sunni Muslims. And, the Syrian government is officially Shia and also like Alawite and stuff. So, I mean, they are the ones that this group, the rebels, are trying to kill. So it would make sense that, these people would be safer the more south they go. So Trevor could be taking people towards Hama, thinking, get them to safety. And that's when he could run into Ariel and Schruler, and they don't stay there because more of the group is coming, more of the rebels are coming, so they could be, working to document stuff. And Trevor can't just say like, oh, well, I want to go back to the Kurds, because he can't get to the Kurds, because he can't just go north because of the rebel group. So this makes perfect sense. It gives me a perfect reason why Trevor doesn't just say like, hey, I don't want to deal with all this. Palmyra would actually be on the way where, he could go to Palmyra and then work his way up. A battle for Camp Kate ensues. Then I'll say, despite inflicting I'll just say heavy losses. Trevor has to gather as many people as possible and flee Camp Kate because of the arrival of additional rebel forces. So then I don't really need this chapter about conclusions necessarily. I mean, I may still have stuff like that, but then could I jump to having in Hama, Ariel and Schruler are working to document historical sites before their destruction by ISIS or any other group. Then I could say Trevor arrives with refugees and I'll just say and meets with Ariel and Schruler, who explain their purpose in Syria. With the arrival of the rebels, Trevor agrees to continue south with, I'll just say ANS, towards Palmyra. Then I would have to change up the characters a bit. I would have to switch characters, kind of, but to whom? It wouldn't be a Syrian commander, I think, because, they're going up that way. Oh, so they're going to Homs to, defend the area against the rebels. So I wouldn't have a chapter about that. True. Do I have a chapter with Layla? I don't really think I need that. Let's see here. I only have 4 or 5 chapters to go. How many chapters do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'd only have 2 more chapters I need to do. Let's see. Storyline A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's good. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'd have 2 more chapters. Maybe 3. So if I just were to cut that, maybe I could have it just stick with them. I don't think I want to do another chapter with the Syrian rebel commander guy, because I think he's probably out of the story, because they're probably working to, lock down this area and prepare to fight the Syrian regime. So it's not like he's going to, continue chasing after Trevor or anything. Maybe I should have a chapter about, do I set up an ISIS commander? Because what I'm thinking is if there's a commander who could kind of be the villain that, Trevor could fight him in Palmyra. But I don't know. I don't know if Trevor necessarily needs to come into conflict in Palmyra. So I'm not sure if there needs to be a villain set up. But basically what I was thinking is, I could switch to ISIS and maybe they could hear about, Okay, yeah, I think I'm onto something here. Regardless of who, like, it is, who this guy is, I could always just have him survive. But maybe I could have something where. Let me think. Okay, I'm onto something. Maybe. For Act 2, there's a ISIS commander. There's two ISIS commanders. One is at the Mosul Dam. He gets killed. Another commander is at Sinjar. Well, that guy, I don't think I definitively said what happens with him. He could live. So maybe that guy goes back into Syria and he could meet with ISIS's new leader because in Syrian Dander, Trevor kills the leader of ISIS. So it'd be a new guy, we'd meet who currently leads ISIS. So that ISIS commander could go back to meet the ISIS leader and he could give that guy new orders. He could tell that guy, hey, I hear that the Syrian military is withdrawing from Palmyra because they're heading toward Hama and stuff to fight these rebels. So what I want you to do is to attack Palmyra. So yes, this fulfills like my purpose. I feel like, after this chapter, I should have a switch like a different character. So ISIS commander meets with the leader of ISIS who tells him that Palmyra is emptied of its forces as the regime moves to defend Hama. He instructs the commander to assault Palmyra and destroy the heathen sites. So yeah, I don't actually think Trevor is going to like come into conflict with this guy because I'm kind of thinking I could just be saving this guy for Atlantis Dislodged because I'd like to save some characters because basically every character who survives till this point is going to appear in Atlantis Dislodged. So maybe this commander, he could be the leader of ISIS in the next book, or maybe in the next book he becomes the leader of ISIS, or if whatever ISIS is doing, invading Israel, I could have that character reappear, whether he's still a commander or what, or maybe he is hunting Trevor because Trevor is like ISIS's number one enemy at this point. He destroyed the heathen sites. So then I would have, I guess I'd already have that chapter. Let's see. Is that it? Trevor, Ariel, and Schuler work to document the sites in Palmyra. ISIS takes over. I'll just say ISIS, led by the commander, takes over Palmyra. Then I don't need all this now because I just said that. Takes over Palmyra. I don't think this would need to be its own chapter because, I'm not going to show the massacre or anything. So Trevor, Ariel, and Schuler work to document the sites in Palmyra. Just for now, I'll actually tag this onto that. Okay, now, how many chapters is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Have I been cutting down on chapters? You know what? Since I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure if I really need to do like 6 or 7 chapters about Palmyra because I think it's kind of a relatively small storyline. So I don't think I need to keep it to like 6 or 7 chapters like with the other ones. So I could do, the 5-6 chapters about the Camp Kate storyline and then just like 4 chapters about the Palmyra storyline. And then that way I'll still have like 10 chapters or so I could play with for the Al-Tabqa storyline or whatever. So I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 chapters to play with. And even if I do come up a little short, that's okay. I could always create other chapters later. So let's see. Ariel and Schuler have the symposium. That cannot follow one after the other. There needs to be like another chapter between there, because how do Ariel and Schuler get from Palmyra to Jerusalem or whatever? That's a long way. So let's think here. Trevor needs to get back with the Kurds, and Ariel and Schuler need to get to Jerusalem or wherever, to Israel. They can't go east because that's where ISIS is. They can't really go north because that's where the rebels and stuff are. And Trevor, I don't think, can just like go on his own. Trevor is kind of forced to head down like toward Damascus, but does he have to go all the way there? He has to get back up to the Kurds somehow. It'd probably make the most sense if he like was able to hitch some kind of a ride or something. So I think the rebels, or the regime, the Syrian regime, is actually like has a two-pronged approach or whatever. They could be working to reinforce Hama, and they could be working to reinforce Al-Tabqa, like there's the airbase there. So they could be moving both directions. I guess it's possible that Trevor could actually like hitch a ride with the military to go up to Al-Tabqa, and Ariel and Schuler could continue southwest or whatever toward Damascus and whatever. Let's see. Trevor and Arrow ISIS shows up in Palmyra. Would this be a separate chapter? I think this would be like, section 1 of a chapter, and then it'd be like a section break, and then it'd be the ISIS commander takes over Palmyra. Then I could have another section break, and Trevor hitches a military ride northeast, I guess. I'll just say north to Al-Tabqa is what I'm thinking. To Al-Tabqa. I don't know if I'm going to spell that differently. Let's see. Battle for Al-Tabqa. Yeah, so there's no H on that, so I think I'll just keep it with that. Where to go? Al-Tabqa. Ride north to Al-Tabqa to rejoin the Kurds, while Ariel and Schuler continue south. Okay, this is probably going to I don't know how to say, but I don't think I want to have this scene yet. Follow immediately after. So I think we're pretty much getting into the third storyline. So basically what I think is have one chapter for the third storyline, and then once that's done, then I could have the next chapter with Ariel and Schuler. So what I'll do is I'll actually put this. Can I do that? Just like that? So yeah, then this would be the next chapter. So basically right here, we're already beginning the third storyline. All of this is storyline A. All of this is storyline B about Palmyra. And now right here, we are getting into storyline C. So here we go. Storyline C, which is Al-Tabqa and the Kurds kind of approaching Raqqa. Okay, now I have to mix up their chronology here, because the Battle of Tabqa Air Base, which is mostly involving Islamic State and the military, where Islamic State attacked this base, that happened in 2014, which is basically exactly the time when this book is set, and they captured the base. But then what happens after that is Al-Tabqa Dam. That doesn't happen till 3 years later, but I just have to have it. So let's see here. I think it could just be a joint operation where the Kurds are going to hit Al-Tabqa from the north, kind of, and the Syrian military is moving to attack it from the south. Or I could have it be where ISIS takes over Al-Tabqa, like in that first chapter. And so the Kurds and the military are both going to reinforce it. I think that makes the most sense. Originally, what I was thinking was that one guy who went south to Palmyra, he could be the one to move on Al-Tabqa. But, I think that doesn't really make sense. He should be more down near Palmyra, and he should, be pushing as much as he can southwest. He shouldn't just suddenly go to Al-Tabqa because it's like he knows Trevor's heading up there, so now he heads up there as well. That would just not make sense because, this guy, he moves south to Tikrit, and that's where Trevor is, and then that's in Act 1, and then in Act 2, he goes to Sinjar, and that's where Trevor goes. Here in Act 3, he's gone down to Palmyra, and that's where Trevor is. So it'd really just be so far beyond belief if he goes to Al-Tabqa, and that's where Trevor is. So I think that guy is probably out of the story now. So the question is, do I actually show from the ISIS perspective them taking over Al-Tabqa? I don't think so. I think I need to do more Layla chapters and stuff. So since the last we saw Trevor is in Palmyra heading up toward Al-Tabqa. I'll just add a note here that ISIS is currently besieging Al-Tabqa, and the Syrian military is rushing to defend the area where they have a prominent air base. That's just kind of a note for myself. I'll work it in some way into the book. And also, I just say that because I don't want to have like a whole other chapter about that. So, since I like changing characters up, I don't want to have another Trevor chapter here. I think what I'll do is Layla. Do I just say Layla chapter, or do I say Layla begins campaign toward Al-Tabqa? I guess that's fine. I guess since the Kurds are in the north here, they could be moving to retake that dam, maybe. Yeah, I guess that just makes sense that the Kurds are moving down this way. So Layla begins campaign. I don't really like that begins campaign, so I'll just say Layla and her army or unit, or Layla and her forces move south to attack Al-Tabqa. Would that be its own chapter? I don't really know if I'd have enough for her there. That doesn't seem like it would be a full chapter. But, I could do, several paragraphs or a page or whatever talking more about Layla, just, having not her introduction since she's already been introduced, but I could just have more about her and her backstory and whatever. Or alternatively, there is the question about the one girl, the Yazidi girl, like what's up with her? She's supposed to like begin training with the Kurdish, military and stuff. So actually, what I was going to say was, I don't think they should have that girl anywhere near the front lines yet because she's not a soldier. And I don't think they would, have her join the fighting yet. I think they would have her somewhere up here in the north, where it's safe and they could begin training her and stuff. So maybe could Layla actually be up there with her? So I guess just to make sure this could be a full chapter, I'll say Layla presides over some of the training of the YPJ fighters, which is the all-female fighters, including the Yazidi girl. So they could kind of have a scene together a little bit And maybe like Layla could explain more about, her backstory or whatever to the girl, because Layla has also like, she was abused and stuff by her former husband, and that kind of encouraged her to become a fighter. So she could kind of explain that to this girl. And, Trevor, I think, already knows that. Or no, I think Kate knows that. I think Kate is the one that Layla told this to, but that doesn't matter. But anyway, so Layla presides over some of the training of the YPJ fighters, all just thrown further north near Cobain. Layla sets out with her army to move south to Al-Tabqa. So I'm not sure yet if I'd want to switch to an Ariel and Schuler chapter, because, they shouldn't be close to Israel yet. Like Ariel and Schuler are probably now like down toward Damascus. So they wouldn't be in Israel yet, and they wouldn't have set up this conference yet. So I think I need to do a Trevor chapter after this. So I guess it would have to be, maybe Trevor wants to reunite with the Kurds, but, maybe the military is down here and ISIS is here and the Kurds are up here. So he kind of has to help the Syrian military move on Al-Tabqa. Never mind me, I'm just completely rambling here. No one's listening to me anyway. At this point, I'm basically mixing everything up. So, this city originally fell in 2014, I think, which is when this book is set. Where did it go? And so that was mainly just the Syrian regime in this city fighting ISIS, and then the regime withdrew and ISIS took over. Then 3 years later, the Kurds are moving south and, fight to retake that dam. But the way I have it is the military is moving to reinforce the city. Maybe it's already kind of taken and they're trying to take it back. I guess like the US could be assisting as well. Airbase, 500 SDF fighters. SDF is the Kurdish group. It's Syrian Democratic Forces, but I mean, that's like, it's Kurds. It's not Syria so much. It's more Kurdish forces. Oh, so wait, I should actually read this. They are airlifted across the Euphrates River and Lake Assad, which would be here, and were dropped off at the west of Tabqa, so they are dropped off here somewhere. U.S. air support and artillery from the Marines support the attack. They land wherever that is, west of the dam, capturing it as well. So they may be somewhere around here. But yeah, so I kind of like it that, the Syrian military is coming up and the Kurds are coming down and the Americans are hitting it as well. So ISIS is getting hit from all sides, really. So yeah, I think basically when Trevor gets here, the military could be doing that. They could be, airdropping Kurdish forces on the south side of this lake. And so that way they could hit from both the north and the south, in addition with the help from the Syrian military. So I think kind of what happens is the Syrian military kind of takes everything like, south and west of this river, sort of. And the Kurds kind of take everything to the north of this river. But right now they're basically everyone wants to make sure this dam is retaken. And yeah, so Trevor arrives near Al-Tabqa, where the military, Kurds, and American allies all begin the push against, I'll just say, the city. I think that is good, but then the problem is, if I have that scene with Ariel and Schuler, why would Trevor be taking the time out of, this busy battle to have that talk with them, He's busy, but I can't really push it way way down unless I actually have this scene or whatever, like at the end of the act. The problem with that is, would readers even remember about Ariel and Schuler? I'm not sure if it really matters so much, because I think this chapter might be from Kate's point of view. So it wouldn't really matter, like, if in chapter 59 or whatever, if I have this chapter with Ariel and Schuler, because it'll be from Kate's point of view, so it'll be like a character shift. So you'll be like, okay, this is something new, but then you'll meet these characters who have already been introduced, and then they'll be talking about how they were in Palmyra and stuff. And so that'll remind readers about, like, oh yeah, that's who these characters are. So I don't know if that would be the final chapter or not, but maybe. I'll just say for now it is. Because, yeah, like I say, if I have this chapter here somewhere, the first problem is if I have it too soon, Ariel and Schuler don't have time to get down to Israel. And if I have it too late, Trevor would be in the middle of the battle against ISIS. So he doesn't have time to do this symposium thing. But he does after this battle. So, yeah, I think this chapter does properly go toward the end of the act. I don't know if I want to have like other characters introduced, like, antagonist characters or whatever. Gosh, I'm already kind of figuring, like, running low on ideas, because I'd almost want to like have this next chapter be like Trevor and Layla get back together. But I don't know if that's too soon. I'd kind of like Trevor to help, fighting to take over the dam. Maybe he's still kind of doing humanitarian work because there's the military here. I mean, the Syrian military, and there's the American military giving aid. So Trevor could presumably have access to humanitarian supplies. So he could be doing humanitarian work at this point, because he could kind of reason that, the military is here, so he doesn't need to do that, The professionals are here. The professionals are fighting. He is not like a professional soldier at this point. So he could just be doing humanitarian aid, but that wouldn't really make for a full chapter. I guess when in doubt, I should just look to follow, like, historically what happened, because, I mean, this is basically the assault on the Al-Tabqa Dam, even though the chronology of it is off. Trevor reunites with Layla. I have this idea where I really want them to, hook up, even though Trevor's like 20 years her junior. I think just part of what's going on here is that Trevor really feels sort of betrayed by his friends, sort of. I don't want to get into it too much, but like in Autumn and Destiny, how Kate says, I never want to see you again. And, his boss kind of betrays him in Arabian Dawn, so he kind of feels betrayed there. He had a real kind of close relationship with Asajala, the Saudi prince, and he kind of feels betrayed there. So Trevor's kind of feeling like, his friends have kind of abandoned him. And sort of what was supposed to be going on with him mentally is that he's struggling to find some kind of emotional support, and Layla is real close with him and likes him because he's working to help the Kurds and everything. And Layla has kind of like, thought that she could never love anyone else, and that she's going to be like a career soldier and that she's going to die in combat eventually. She really believes that's her destiny or whatever. I wonder if this was like all man-made, this road or landmass or whatever, or if the waterway like naturally went into all that or what. I'm just totally rambling here. But yeah, I don't know exactly how to do this. Like, when and where do they hook up? Because they're supposed to be attacking this dam. And I guess I have to tell you, because, I mean, I have to cover this. But I do plan for Layla to get killed. And I think what's happening, since they're going to declare a ceasefire over this dam, because ISIS does not want this dam to blow up, because if that dam fails, Raqqa is going to be devastated. So Layla has to get killed before the ceasefire. So we need to have the ceasefire. So did I already reverse engineer any of this? No, I did not. So just again, reverse engineer the book. ISIS pushes for a ceasefire so repairs can commence at the Al-Tabqa dam to ensure it doesn't fail. Trevor goes into the dam to help with the I'll just say dam to help. And so, yeah, Trevor can actually have a face-to-face meeting with some of the ISIS fighters. And, maybe they could actually find out that Trevor is the one who killed their former leader. But there is a really cold truce right now. So I think even ISIS at this point would honor that truce because they want to protect this dam at all costs, even though they know Trevor is there, right there in front of them, and he hates ISIS as well. This is just I don't know how to say, you'd never think this meeting would happen where, there's actually, a ceasefire or whatever, an agreement, a little peace, whatever, with ISIS, which, yeah. So Trevor goes into the dam to help, and then the next chapter would be that where Ariel and Schuler and Trevor, presumably at that time, he would have a little bit of time to, appear and talk about what's going on with the historical monuments and stuff. And also because ISIS has a ceasefire for the time being, that is also a good time to do stuff where, there's kind of a lull in the fighting right now because of the ceasefire. So there is a very brief window of opportunity to go into these historical sites where ISIS is not in control yet and to document them so that if the ISIS takes over the area, the sites could be preserved. So ISIS pushes for a ceasefire so repairs can commence. So the scene before that, I guess, would be... I'm just going to write Layla is killed in the push to take the dam. Trevor mourns for her, but continues the fight. I want to have a scene more where Trevor mourns for Layla. I'll just do a new chapter. Trevor mourns for Layla. Maybe has a scene with the Yazidi girl. Oh, so yeah, I guess that's okay. I don't know, I may rearrange this a bit. So the scene before that, would it be Trevor and Layla have their romantic scene together? I guess I'll just write it in because it has to happen at some point, even if I wind up putting another chapter in there. Trevor and Layla have... I don't even know what to call it. I don't want to say they don't fall in love. Layla basically tells him that, I appreciate that, I felt these things for you that I didn't think I'd ever feel again. But, she says it's her destiny to fight and die in battle. And little she knows it's, right around the corner. Trevor and Layla... have intimate... I don't want to say intimate. Trevor and Layla have snoo. Is that the right word for... that's a Futurama reference. Snoo. Yeah. Anyway, kind of the problem I'm having is it feels like this is already pretty complete, where I don't see really what I could do for 5 more chapters. I mean, Trevor reunites with Layla, then they could have their scene, which is their like love-making scene, and then in the next scene, Layla is killed or whatever. There could be still more things that happen, but I want to know what, because I don't have any other scene with like an ISIS commander who could be the villain that they're working to fight. I could have a villain, but I suppose because I mean, some guy has to like agree to the ceasefire or whatever. So maybe there's an ISIS commander in the area. Something that I thought of, one of my early ideas for Babylon Dithers is that originally what I was going to do was actually have Trevor have like a unholy alliance or whatever with Russia, because Trevor's trying to fight ISIS, or maybe he's trying to help the Kurds. And for one reason or another, I was thinking Trevor could go up and like ask the Russians to help, because basically no one wants the Kurds to be independent, which I might still do. I might still do that in Act 4. I don't know. But the other idea I had was that at some point in Babylon Dithers, I was going to have Trevor actually kill an American soldier. And I didn't know why he would do that, what the pretext for it would be. But essentially, I was going to have something where, Trevor kills a U.S. soldier, and it's kind of like his loyalty to the Kurds. Like maybe the soldier is attacking the Kurds for some crazy reason, I don't know why, and Trevor kills the guy. And it was going to kind of be like a point of no return thing, where Trevor feels like his final attachment with the United States is over with, like he has killed an American soldier, where he is now like fully on the other side, like whatever side the US is on. Trevor is now, essentially an enemy of the United States, even though like not quite that far. I mean, it's not like he's devoted enemy of the US, but for one reason or another, he kills a US soldier. Well, I was reading the dam was reported to have become inoperable due to U.S. coalition bombing and artillery strikes, though the reasons were unknown, adding that ISIS still held the main building and turbines. The U.S. aircraft had dropped more than whatever bombs against towers attached to the dam. So yeah, the U.S. is actually attacking the dam. So kind of what I'm thinking is maybe the Americans are actually thinking, hey, if we actually destroy this dam, we could take out Raqqa. And that seems to kind of be what they were doing. They're bombing this dam. The dam almost failed as the floodgates were rendered inoperable. So yeah, maybe the Americans are actually like, hey, well, let's just take out this dam and we'll take out ISIS. Which I like, because that's kind of like an Americans, doing evil things, kind of just screwing up the world, where they're just, they don't care about the effects of it. They don't care about like the civilians in the area. They don't care about like all the farmland. So it's kind of a reverse of what I was thinking for Act 2, where Trevor would consider draining the Mosul Lake, wherever Mosul went. Trevor was thinking of draining this to make sure that the dam doesn't blow up and flood everyone. So instead, it could actually be kind of a flip of that, where the Americans actually decide, hey, let's just blow up this dam. And Trevor could wind up killing a soldier to try to prevent that. Now, who would blow it up and why? I mean, I know why, I just explained that, but I mean to actually introduce that person. So it could just be like a CIA operative. There was one that I set up in Syrian Dander. There's this guy in the presidential palace. I don't think I named him though. And I don't really think I want to do him as much. I'd really like it to be a US soldier. So maybe the Americans are on the ground here because they're helping the Kurds. And so maybe there's the airstrikes and stuff going on against the dam. And so Trevor goes to the American guy to be like, hey, call off those attacks. You're going to blow up the dam. And, maybe the guy doesn't do it. And maybe he keeps ordering strikes, and that could lead to Trevor fighting the guy and killing him. I was kind of thinking that could be like a bridge too far. Like, readers may read that and hate Trevor. And part of the series is ever since Syrian Dander, I've been trying to redeem Trevor, where I didn't like him in German Derelict, the first book. I didn't like him in Egyptian Demise. So with Syrian Dander, I began, redeeming his character, where, fixing his flaws, making him a more likable character. And so that's kind of been a focus of the series in Autumn and Destiny, and then Arabian Dawn. So his reasons would actually be entirely good. He doesn't want that dam to blow up because he knows of the bad effects that could cause. And he knows how, all the civilians in the area could be killed. He knows how the farmland could be devastated and all that, how they could lose electricity. So that's actually a good reason for Trevor to do that. That's basically a noble reason to fight the guy. So I don't really think readers should hate Trevor for that. That seems like it's actually kind of the right thing for him to do. So Trevor arrives near Al-Tabqa. Oh, that could lead up to Trevor's... I was going to say I wanted to have a scene with Trevor and Layla where Trevor is really doubting himself. And this would be the perfect pretext for it. He has killed a U.S. soldier, so Trevor is like... my life is over. I've made so many bad choices. My friends have left me. He feels betrayed. He feels he's betrayed everyone he's loved. He's been a failure for everyone. So I will say in this chapter, I still don't know exactly which chapter all these would go in, but I'm just trying to still reverse engineer it. American forces continue to bomb the Al-Tabqa Dam, causing serious damage. Trevor tries to call off the strikes, but the American soldier on the ground refuses to listen and orders more strikes, leading to Trevor fighting and ultimately killing the soldier. And then I don't know if it'd be a whole other chapter, but then I could just kind of squeeze this in. Trevor and Layla, I'll just say Trevor talks with Layla about what he has done and the decisions he has made in his life and the people he has wronged and who have, I don't want to say betrayed him, and who have not let him down. I don't know. I'll just delete he has wronged. I'll just say and Trevor's trust issues. He and Layla have snoo. American forces continue bombing. Is that good, Trevor? If I was to just delete this... Yeah. This would be a short act. Instead of trying to, force this to be exactly 60 chapters or whatever, every act have 20 chapters, I don't think I really need it because, I've pretty much told the story. So... Trevor arrives near Al-Tabqa, where the Kurds, the Syrian military, and the Americans are all pushing to attack the city. Trevor reunites with Layla. The American forces continue bombing the dam. Trevor tries to get the soldier to stop and ultimately kills him. Trevor talks with Layla about it, and she, sleeps with him. And then Layla is killed in the push. I don't know if I like this, how it goes so quickly, though, that, they have their, scene together, and then the very next scene, she dies. But at the same time, I mean, maybe that's the way it is. I mean, maybe it's like, at night they have their scene together, and in the next day, the next morning, she's killed. And yeah, I mean, it's really abrupt and all that, but that's the way things are sometimes. And I think it'd also be good just for like the emotional connection of it. They just got together. So you're thinking like, okay, so they're going to be love interest now. And then she immediately dies. And there's still a lot of book left. So I think this is pretty good. I know it's a little bit short, but I think that's perfectly fine. All the essential parts are there. And maybe I'll wind up adding a chapter or two here and there. And ultimately, I don't need to have, exactly 20 chapters. It's just kind of the guidelines or whatever. I mean, just to sort of be on pace. But I mean, the first act has about 20 chapters. The second act has about 20 chapters. The third act looks like it has 14 chapters. So it's a little short, but I mean, it's not too short. So I don't even know if I should redo all these numberings. Is that really easy to do? Set numbering value, begin at 57. Will that work? Oh, good. So yeah, I think that will actually do it for Act 3. I feel pretty decent about it. Trevor mourns for Layla, maybe has a scene with the Yazidi girl so they could kind of talk. They both felt really liked Layla, the Yazidi girl, who was kind of beginning to view Layla like a mentor, like kind of a mother figure for that girl. And Trevor, he really liked Layla beyond like, their brief romantic hookup. He really admired Layla, and he felt, she was a symbol of courage and strength and encouraging, women to fight and everything. So he really feels, that's a major blow, especially to like the women in the region not having Layla. And it might be kind of part of this Yazidi girl's arc that, she might be a future commander of like the all women's forces. Like right now, she's just kind of a recruit. But when you see her next in Atlantis Dislodged, she is like actually taking part in the fighting now. She's not going to be a commander yet or anything, but maybe that's part of the arc for her in Atlantis Dislodged, where maybe she does become a commander of the Kurdish, all women's forces or whatever. Maybe not necessarily taking over Layla's job, but maybe she's like a, commander under the new commander or something, Or even if not that, maybe at just the tail end of the book, she kind of gets a leadership role, depending on what happens in Atlantis Dislodged. I don't really have much of an arc necessarily. I mean, I don't really have too much planned. Kind of my idea, though, is that, I don't really want to talk about it too much, but in Atlantis Dislodged, what I think will happen is the Kurds will kind of be semi-autonomous. I don't want to like say what happens, but I think they'll kind of still have a good degree of independence. So maybe that Yazidi girl will kind of be one of the commanders kind of to help lead, the Kurds and the Yazidis in the area. And yeah, so she's kind of taking over in Layla's honor. So Trevor mourns for Layla. But then the thing I don't really like too much is that this scene now seems, the scene with Ariel and Schuler, like talking about the historical sites, that seems like there's a definite emotional disconnect between that and what we've just had with Trevor and Layla and all that. Like, oh, now we're back to the historical monuments and stuff. But it may be okay because if this chapter is from Kate's perspective, Kate's not aware of the thing with Layla or anything. So, I mean, Kate is separate from that. And since readers are going to basically be essentially like meeting Kate in person for the first time in this book, I think it makes sense that Kate would not have any reason to be like mourning for Layla. Ariel and Schuler wouldn't. They don't even know Layla. So, she could just see Trevor, and maybe, I could have a line, something where, Kate could say that she sees sadness in Trevor's eyes, and maybe she kind of wonders, like, is that potentially because of her, even though it's actually more probably because of Layla. But, Kate may decide, whatever Trevor is thinking, still doesn't care. She doesn't want to see him. So she leaves. She walks out. And the next time we meet Trevor is in Act 4, when presumably Trevor gets word from the Kurds that they are having a referendum for independence. And I was going to say, so there's the ceasefire. So yeah, so there's really no fighting against ISIS right now at the current moment. So Trevor hears that the Kurds in Iraq are pushing for independence, and Mosul is still in ISIS's hands. So maybe since there's a ceasefire like around Raqqa, maybe Trevor like goes into Iraq thinking like, okay, well, I'm going to get back with the Kurds and maybe I'll see what's going on, like if they're going to push to take Mosul. And that's when, all the stuff about the Kurdish referendum in Iraq. So yeah, I think I may have some other reason than that. Like I was kind of thinking maybe Firat or the Malazada family actually asks Trevor to come over. Like maybe, I just thought of this. Maybe the reason they actually want Trevor to come is because maybe they want Trevor to ask his dad, Stephen Knight, who is a senator, to support the Kurdish referendum. So maybe that could be their reason for like, hey, we know a senator's son, so, and we know this senator's son likes us, so let's, invite him over. In fact, I may actually write that right now. Act 4. I'm just going to write it now. I'll just say Malazada family has a discussion about the upcoming referendum. Maybe Firat says he knows a U.S. senator's son who supports the Kurdish independence movement, and the Malazada family sends word to Trevor that they would like to talk with him. So yeah, I do not know how that will go at all, because basically the Americans will not want the Kurds to go independent, but that's definitely a reason to get Trevor to go back to Iraq. And then other things can happen as well. Ooh, in fact, I just thought of another idea. Should I have it now? Oh gosh, I almost feel like I should actually begin outlining Act 4, but I really don't want to. So I'll just say, because the ideas are coming to me. So Trevor goes to Iraq to meet with the Malazada family as requested. He meets with Firat, maybe? I'll just do a question mark. And Malik, who is kind of the main guy who's going to be kind of the heir apparent, to discuss independence. Then I'll just say, while Trevor supports their independence, he, I don't know how to say exactly, I'll just say he will not be used. I don't know exactly if this is the right way to say it or if I'll have it this way, but while Trevor supports their independence, he is reluctant to ask his father to support their independence. But I'll say, but he does say he will discuss the issue with him. This is so, I'm getting distracted here. I did not mean to do Act 4 at all, but these are just coming to me. The ideas are coming to me, and I don't want to forget them. The next chapter, I had a storyline idea where, again, this is like something based on history, but I don't want to like look up the page on Wikipedia or whatever, but the Malazada family is kind of based on a real life Kurdish family. And I don't really know if I want to say what family that is for like legal purposes or whatever. But they are definitely based on a real family. And what happened is there was like some college guy who was, I forget exactly what the details were, but I think he may have been critical of this family. And so apparently that family like kidnapped that guy and killed him. They like shot him in the head. And so what I was going to do was like that guy's sister could want to kill Malik or whoever, or Malik's father, because she blames him for her brother's murder. So I'll just say, I don't know how to say this, but sister of a man killed by the Malazada. I don't even know if that's the right spelling for Malazada, but let's look up, see. Malazada. That looks right. Family goes to attack either Malik or his father, blaming them for the murder of her brother. Trevor foils her attack and questions her about her reasoning and learns about the possible dubious, I'll just say dubious past of, I'll just copy this, of the Malazada family. I guess at this point, should I just continue outlining Act 4? I really did not plan on doing that at all. But I'm already, gaining steam, but I'm sure this video is already kind of approaching, 2 hours probably. Okay, I guess we're deep into Act 4 now, so I guess this is on. I only intended to do Act 3 for this video, so I guess, just continue on to Act 4. So Act 4 is supposed to be about the Iraqi Kurdish referendum. I don't know, 2014 Iraqi Kurdish. I guess it was in 2017. But, I'm mixing up everything. So, I mean, the battle for the Al Tabqa Dam happened in 2017, and now the Kurdish referendum. Also 2017, even though this book is set in 2014. And then in the next book, I'll have, October 7, but that'll be October 7 of 2014 instead of 2023 or whatever it was in real life. But that's okay. So I think I pretty much know this pretty well. Oh, this is interesting. It was supposed to be held in 2014, but the long-standing calls gained impetus following the northern Iraq offensive by Islamic State. So that's Act 1 of this book. During the Iraqi Civil War, Baghdad-controlled forces abandoned some areas, which were then taken by Peshmerga. So, the Kurds occupy more land than they used to. So they kind of feel more emboldened to declare independence. And also, the Iraqi government is still pretty weak. Mosul is still in the hands of ISIS. So, they may be thinking, well, let's go independent. The president has a meeting and they have the referendum for September, which could be going on like during Act 3 of the book while Trevor is doing all his stuff in Syria. The Kurds could be building up for this referendum. So then it led to a military conflict, which the KRG, I guess that's the Kurds lost 40% of their territory, including the Kirkuk oil fields. And then the president resigns and basically says, no, okay, we don't have to go independent. Okay, now, in September after al-Maliki, so he's like based on the first prime minister in Act 1 and 2 of the book. It says after he was resigned and was replaced by the other guy, the Kurds agreed to postpone the referendum, but I'm not going to have that while they focus on fighting against ISIS. But no, they're going to push ahead with a referendum in Act 4. And I know this is like really crunching time that they would do it, already, presumably still in September. So I think the Mosul Dam stuff happens in August. And then the stuff in Syria is, I think, probably happening sometime close to September. And then Trevor goes back to Iraq and it's still September and has the referendum thing. And then he goes back to Syria, and then October 7th, then there'll be the thing with Hamas, and eventually Kate will go up to Syria looking for Trevor to tell him that Alfred is held hostage. So yeah, it's a real narrow window. So yeah, I just don't have a lot of time to, I can't have this delayed for 3 years or whatever. So basically what happens is on the ballot, the Kurds do vote to go independent, but then the Iraqi government sends the military, and the military pretty quickly and easily takes over a lot of territory, and the Kurds don't really want to fight. And yeah, that winds up with Trevor just deciding like, okay, you guys don't want independence, I'm going back to Syria. And at that time, then the ceasefire over the dam could, fall apart, and they could continue the push against Raqqa. Okay, now, unfortunately, Act 4 has always really been a problem for me, just because I'm really struggling figuring out exactly how to do it. But I guess let's just do my best. So let's see, 57... 76, I guess that's 20 chapters or whatever. So let's just reverse engineer it. So the book ends with, here's the scene. I wrote it like a year or two ago, but, where Layla's saying, how she likes Trevor, and, then Trevor's kind of, he doesn't want her to die, but she kind of tells him that, you can't keep me. I have this duty to be a soldier, and it's my destiny to die in battle. She really believes that. And I may completely rewrite this, but I didn't want to forget about it, so I wrote it a couple years ago. So anyway, the book ends with I don't know exactly how this is going to go, but I'll just say with the Kurds in Iraq unwilling to fight for their independence, Trevor decides to leave them and returns to Syria to assist the Syrian Kurds in finally defeating ISIS. So yeah, then I think that is pretty much the end of the book. I don't really want to too much reverse engineer it, but I know one of these chapters would be the Iraqi general who is a Sunni Muslim, him, attacking Iraqi Kurdistan, but I don't necessarily want to put that here yet. So I don't want to reverse engineer it too much. Part of what I wanted to do for Act 4 was to have a lot of characters with the Malazada family, where I would just really go into detail about, all these different families and their political rivalries and all that. And so, yeah, I have all these names, and I really wanted to have a lot more names. So I wanted it to be, a lot of characters, and Trevor's trying to figure out, who everyone is and get everyone to work together. And I could still, do some of that as I write this. Or maybe I won't. Maybe it will just be kind of a smaller cast. But maybe you'll know, these, they're all large families. Like the Malazada family, they may, occupy largely, a whole region of Iraqi Kurdistan. So maybe that family has, whatever, 1,000 prominent family members or something, So these are all real large families. I think for the Kurds, they're like really a tribal people. So a lot of villages may largely kind of be like, one family. Not necessarily like one town is one family, but, each town may kind of have their own just sort of like ancestral history. So, one family may be real strong in one town, another family is really strong in another town. And that's kind of how the Kurds all kind of united to be like one people. It's all these different tribes, all these different families of Iraqi Kurds. And yeah. So I don't know how much I want to like delve into that, but I had the idea where there's the three main political parties. So, I mean, there's the Malazada family. That's a huge family, presumably. The Solani family, the president is part of this family. Then there's this other family who I don't have any storyline for that character whatsoever. Okay, but getting back to Act 4, kind of an issue I'm already feeling is if Trevor meets this girl, this sister of this guy who is killed by the Malazada family, Trevor may right then have reason to be like, I should stay away from this family. And also at this point, because Trevor has he was close with Asajala, the Saudi prince. So maybe if Trevor hears any kind of word that, this family may be bad, Trevor's probably going to think like, oh, I saw warning signs with Asajala too, and I kind of ignored them. So maybe if he were to hear about, this girl says that this family murdered her brother, I think Trevor, especially because he's not deeply close with his family, he likes Firat, but he really doesn't know the rest of this family at all. If he hears this woman say, hey, this family is deeply corrupt, they murdered my brother, I think Trevor would believe her pretty well, and I think he would be a pretty good judge of character now, where Trevor would probably decide like, okay, yeah, I'm going to keep my distance from this family. So maybe he does. Maybe, so right now he's in good with his family. He likes Firat. And so Firat, tells his family, like, hey, I know this guy, Trevor. We should have him come to Iraq and have his dad support us, support our referendum, so that the American government is supporting us. So Trevor goes there to meet with them, and he could kind of decide, hey, I'm not just going to be your lapdog or whatever, just having my father, whatever. Trevor doesn't like people using him because of his connection with his father. Trevor is used to that. I mean, a lot of people have done that. Even Asajala did that. So Trevor, even though he likes the Kurds, he would really probably be like, I'm not going to get my dad to support you guys unless, his dad really actually supports it. And right now, Trevor's not really altogether too close with his dad. So I don't even know if they're when's the last time they spoke with each other or anything. So, maybe they're meeting at a restaurant or something, Trevor and Firat and Malik's dad or something. And leaving the restaurant, he could see this girl with a knife or something, kind of walking up behind the Malazadas, and he could grab her and, she tells him about the stuff. I don't know exactly how that would go, how they want to see that this happens or whatever, but maybe he could just kind of grab her and be like, what are you doing? They could leave, the Malazadas could leave, and then that girl could explain what happened. And so what I was going to say is, maybe since Trevor's becoming a better judge of character, maybe he does decide, all right, I believe you. This family, if you say they're corrupt, if you say whatever, I mean, I don't think Trevor would have any reason to actually do anything against this family. So, and plus Trevor likes the Kurds. So, I mean, it's not going to be like Trevor will suddenly want to take down this family. Trevor instead may just decide like, okay, well, I'll try another family. Maybe could this girl be part of another family? Like, could she be part of that? Where was it? Is it up here? Could she be part of the Helmy family? Or even if not, maybe like Trevor goes to talk with her, and then maybe like she is part of this group. So she hates the Malazadas. She hates this party. Do you find it funny when I say the name Biggest? Anyway, and so maybe instead of like continuing on with the Malazadas, Trevor could go off and like, maybe, I don't know exactly what he would do with this girl, like, how he would have the conversation with her, but, he probably just had dinner with the Malazadas, so he wouldn't go out to dinner with her, but, maybe they just go out somewhere, and she could tell him about how bad the Malazada family is, and I don't know exactly if it would transition to her talking about, this other party or whatever, but she could have a connection with that party, and so anyway, I don't know exactly if I'm going to continue with this or how far I go into it. I don't know if this would all still be part of this chapter because I'd kind of like to break it up, but it seems kind of like this would be a natural continuation. If I was to switch characters, would I go back to the Malazadas, like where they're talking privately, where they could kind of recap the dinner. Like they could talk about like, do you think, Trevor's going to side with us? Is he going to do what we want? But I'm not sure what they could say that would be, have a bearing on the plot. So, I mean, it's not like they're going to say like, oh yeah, I think we need to kill Trevor. So they send someone to kill Trevor. So then the next chapter is about, those hitman people trying to knock Trevor off. I mean, that's not going to happen. Let's see. I have not introduced the Iraqi president yet, who is a Kurd. And then I think like the Kurdish regional governor, I think it may be Malik's dad, is the sort of like the president of Iraqi Kurdistan. I don't know if that's actually a thing yet. Part of what I want to kind of show is that the Kurds are not necessarily good to like ethnic minorities, even though Trevor thinks, the Kurds fight to protect minorities and they do so like for the Yazidis and stuff. I don't think the Kurds have an altogether spotless like reputation for that. So I see here Assyrians from whatever that place is. Their mayor is removed by the Kurdish dominated whatever. So maybe I could have the Assyrians, maybe the Kurds, like, it could be the Malazada family. Maybe they, in a town they govern. I don't know if it's going to be Nineveh Provincial Council. Nineveh, I think, is like the regional area like around Mosul. I think Mosul might have historically been the city of Nineveh, like the biblical city of Nineveh. Let's see if I could look it up. But I think it's modern Mosul, Nineveh. Oh, it's an Assyrian city located in modern-day Mosul. So yeah, Mosul is Nineveh, which is just interesting. Like the story in the Bible, Jonah and the giant fish or whatever, when God says, like, I want you to go to Nineveh and whatever, and Jonah's like, screw that, I don't want to go there. Nineveh sucks. It's all desert there. And so God sends a whale. I wonder where the heck that guy was, Jonah. Like, I don't know. Anyway, that's completely irrelevant. But yeah, Mosul is Nineveh, the ancient city of Nineveh. I think that's kind of cool. Anyway, I'm just completely rambling. So I could just have it where there's maybe a Assyrian town kind of governed like the Malazadas kind of take it over and, kick the Assyrians out. Maybe this girl is an Assyrian. This girl, the sister, maybe she's an Assyrian. So like maybe the town wherever she lives. I don't know if Trevor would like go back with her. I love how like the roads here, it's like a wheel spoke pattern where it's like just all circular, and the streets are all leading inward. It's just a real I like the design of this town. It just looks really I don't know, symmetrical or something. I don't know. I'm sorry I'm rambling so much. I think the Malazadas are largely in Erbil. So I think maybe if there's another town here that's largely Assyrian, they might kick the mayor out and replace him with their own guy, like maybe another Malazada family member. And so they say like, oh, if you're Assyrian, you're not, helping us for the referendum. We want to be independent. We want the Kurds to be independent. And so the Malazadas kick that mayor out, the Assyrian mayor, and, try to kind of take over the town because they want it all to go independent. And maybe that's what this girl could be. I don't know exactly if that's the way I want it or if she should be a Kurd and just another member of that political party. Or I don't know. If she's part of this group, Kurdistan Popular People's Front, she's not Kurdish if she's Assyrian. Maybe I could have it be where she is Assyrian, and so she like whatever, just one of these towns, whatever, the Malazada family kind of takes it over. They kick the mayor out, and so whatever reason Trevor could go there. I don't know why, but then maybe he could meet with the Kurdistan Popular People's Front, like whatever. Maybe they could meet with him and say, we have a plan to retake. No, I don't want to do that. Where they could take over the city from the mayor, the Malazada appointed mayor. I don't like that because I'm just going on the wrong track there. But what I was basically going to say was, this other Kurdish family is like, no, you can't take over that town. We want to take over that town. But Trevor wouldn't, fight that battle. I mean, he wouldn't, to him, this is ridiculous. It's like, you're all Kurds. Why are you doing this? And Trevor would also be in support of the Assyrians. Like, hey, if this is an Assyrian town, you should leave them alone and you should represent them, you should include them. You should be inclusive. So it wouldn't make sense that Trevor would switch sides and support this other family or this other political party. But maybe that's the entire point of it. So whatever, say this, whatever Assyrian town, should I just go ahead and write this? I guess. So anyway, sister of a man killed by the male. In an Assyrian town, the Malazada family ousts the Assyrian mayor and replaces him with a Malazada family member. Oh, I'll just say, in the lead up to the referendum in an Assyrian town, could that be this girl's father? Could he be the mayor of that town? Because I'm trying to think exactly how to connect Trevor to this. I'm kind of having trouble, though, if he's in Erbil or whatever with the Malazadas having dinner or whatever, and then as he leaves the restaurant, he sees this girl, why exactly would he go far off with her? I mean, I could understand them maybe walking somewhere. Like if the Malazadas go one way, maybe he and the girl go another way. But why would he go with this girl to another town or whatever? Maybe I'm just getting so distracted. All these geometric shapes are oh, that's pretty. Oh, I want to check that out. I'm just This is hypnotizing to me. Gosh, where was I? What I was going to say was, if the Malazadas are going one way and Trevor and the girl go off the other way, maybe, she could tell him like the Malazadas are bad, and maybe Trevor was going to stay with the Malazadas. So maybe now he's thinking, oh, well, maybe screw that, maybe I shouldn't be hanging out with these people. So arguably, she could argue that, like, oh, well, if you need a place to stay, you could come to my village or whatever. And I'm not sure if he would do that. And, like, would she actually be saying this as, like, a pickup line? Like, is she actually interested in him? I do not think they're going to have a romantic relationship or anything. But could she offer that? Oh, I could do something where, they're kind of together and then she could get a call and maybe it's her dad saying that there's trouble and, the girl could ask Trevor to go with her. Like, she could say, there's trouble in my village. Like, can you take me home or something? For whatever reason, maybe she doesn't have a way home or whatever. She may have gone to the Malazadas because she was going to stab the guy or something. So maybe she thought, she was going to her death to get revenge for her brother. So maybe she didn't have a way home. Then how did this girl get here? Maybe she does have a vehicle, but why would she really want Trevor to take her back? Or why would Trevor go with her? When in doubt, just check Wikipedia. So there's this storyline with the Assyrians. The Malazada family takes over the Assyrian town. A Kurdish delegation met with the prime minister and vice president. That guy used to be the prime minister, but now he's the vice president, to discuss the upcoming referendum. Whoever that guy is, the Assyrian representative. So let's see here. How could I work this in? Because this guy could represent the town that, was taken over. And maybe this guy has a connection with that girl Trevor is with. I do not know. And head of another party. Is that a Assyrian political party? So maybe, this girl could be part of an Assyrian political party, not a Kurdish political party. They would meet foreign missions in Baghdad. So maybe at this point, Trevor can kind of be getting more in contact with the Assyrians through this girl. Let's just presumably say, like, if this one town or whatever is an Assyrian town, the Malazadas take over the mayorship because they want to make sure that town votes for independence. And if it's largely Assyrian, they may not want to be, an independent Kurdistan because, they fear that they may not be represented because the Kurds are just going to take over. They would rather, they're okay with it as it currently is. If there's the mayor of the one city or town or whatever, the Assyrian town, maybe the other delegate that goes to Baghdad to meet with the prime minister and stuff, maybe that's like it's the same party as the mayor. It doesn't have to necessarily be the mayor. It could just be someone from his own party, potentially someone from his own family, maybe also the family of that girl. I don't know, just to make sure she's included. So then they would go to Baghdad, and does it really say what happens? The vote was up to the local councils of the disputed regions. So the Kurds are saying, well, it's up to each town to decide if they're going to vote for independence. And in the meantime, they're taking over all the towns. So then the town, that the Malazadas take over could vote to take part in the referendum. After a rare high-level meeting with the Iranian military chief of staff and Turkish president, they voiced strong opposition to the referendum. Okay, so I like this. And this is kind of what I talked about is basically everyone in the region and really kind of the world, they do not like the Kurds going independent. They want to keep Iraq together as one nation. They don't want it to be like a Kurdish country in the north and a Sunni country, whatever. I don't know exactly where the Sunnis and the Shia are in Iraq, but, one part Sunni, one part Shia. No one wants that. The Americans don't want it. Saudi Arabia doesn't want it. Iran doesn't want it. That's the whole part in Act 1 of the book is Iran wants Iraq to remain one nation. They don't want Iraq splitting up into several different countries, You might figure that if part of Iraq was to go independent and be Shia Islam, that Iran would have an easier time, taking that part of the country over. Like maybe they could even annex it. Like if one part of the country is largely Shia, Iran could be like, okay, well, do you want to join us? Join Iran. But in spite of that, that's not what the Iranians want. The Iranians want Iraq to remain one country, Kurdish, Sunni, and Shia. And the Americans want the same thing. They don't want Kurdish independence or whatever. They don't want Iraq to, break up. Okay, so it seems like the way this referendum works is kind of each town and each village is deciding, are we going to take part in this vote or not? And so that's kind of the challenge right now is probably all these parties are trying to make sure they're in control so they could decide, like, are we going to be in a part of this vote or not? So you see the remaining members, all of whom were Turkmen or Arabs, boycotted the vote. The Iraqi parliament voted to dismiss some dude who is a Kurd from the governorship. So yeah, meanwhile, while all the Kurds are trying to take over each town to make sure that their town votes for independence, the Iraqis are also working to get rid of Kurdish mayors because they don't want them voting for independence. So it's just kind of spiraling out of control. And then the guy, the governor of Kirkuk, who is a Kurd, said he will not follow the dismissal order and will stay in office. So now the governor of Kirkuk is saying, no, you're not relieving me of my position. I'm staying. I'm the governor of this town or region or whatever it is. And so we're brewing closer to civil war. So, the polls open, the voting begins. The Iraqi parliament rejected the referendum, but the Kurds decide to go ahead with it. The Iraqi Supreme Court orders the referendum cease. The Malazadas, however, vote to continue. So we're just continuing to push closer and closer toward civil war, essentially. And, I don't want to read all that, but, they have the vote and it passes. Anyway, I need to actually write some stuff down. So I'm still trying to think, what is Trevor doing with that girl, with that woman? I like the idea that if she is an Assyrian, she has some kind of a connection with whatever town the Kurds are taking over. So, I'm just trying to think exactly how does she get Trevor to go back with her. Maybe it is just sort of a romantic thing, I don't know. I don't really like that idea too much. And I definitely don't want, Trevor to sleep with her or whatever. Why would Trevor go with her? I know Trevor may not have any place to stay in Erbil now, especially if he's deciding he may not want to hang out with the Malazadas. But what else would he be trying to do? This is why I was having so much of a problem with Act 4. I mean, I kind of know the gist of what I want to do. The Kurds are all pushing for independence. They have a bunch of corrupt families who are kind of only interested in their own power, and they're taking over things. and the Iraqi government's trying to keep them from doing that. But, how is Trevor involved in all of this? He wants the Kurds to be independent, but he's not going to be helping to oust all these other mayors and stuff. He doesn't support that. He supports them being independent. I'm just really struggling to think of an excuse for why he would go with her. I could just write in here that for some reason Trevor follows that girl. He goes with her back to her town. But I don't really like just writing that. I'd like to actually have some kind of a better reason. Trevor has been to a couple of Syrian towns, but they were more up this way north of Mosul, and I think he's now in Erbil. So it wouldn't be like, he has any connection with whatever village she is from. She's probably from some, village around Erbil, maybe. I definitely don't want him going up, north of Mosul or whatever. That's just kind of too far. Oh, I like this. Israel became the first state to endorse independent Kurdistan. So yeah, everyone in the world is they don't want the Kurds to go independent. But Israel's yeah, go ahead. So it's just kind of funny. It's just always kind of Israel against the world. Yeah, so you see supporting Israel, opposing everyone. If Trevor was going to go off with that girl and she says the Malazada family is bad, you shouldn't hang out with them, they killed my brother. Oh, gosh, why didn't I just think of this? Trevor could just say okay, I understand, I'm not going to go back with them. And then he could just ask the girl can I take you home? Because, maybe he's worried about her, especially because he is worried if he leaves her, she could continue on looking for the Malazadas because she wants to murder them, So he could kind of tell her, I'm going to believe you about your brother, but I don't want you to continue this, path for revenge, can you go home? Let me take you home. You should go home. Whatever, because he, even though he doesn't necessarily want to protect the Malazada family, he could want to protect this girl. So, he could, for her own, wellness, basically, he could say let me take you home. Make sure, you don't follow the Malazadas and kill them. I understand you're angry about your brother and you want revenge. And Trevor could probably say, he's, wanted revenge for things as well, but it's, kind of not healthy and, he doesn't want her to become a martyr. So he could just simply ask her, let me take you home. And so maybe she lives in the Assyrian town. And yeah, so I mean, I don't know if her father, should he be the mayor? And so, the Kurds, the Malazadas kick him out of office and then he could go home. And then maybe if that girl has another brother or something. No, because then it's all in one family. Okay, I think I got it. If there's the one mayor of the Assyrian village or whatever, he could send a delegate or whatever to Baghdad to discuss, this referendum. He could say how the Malazadas kicked him out of his town, they took away his mayorship. He could send a delegate to Baghdad and maybe it could be a part of this girl's family, or I don't know, but basically she could have some kind of a connection with that. So, where am I? The sister of the man, and asks if, I'll just say, Trevor agrees not to continue. I don't know exactly how to word this, but I'll just say not to continue his relationship with the Malazadas. He asks if he can bring the girl home so that she doesn't continue her quest for revenge. And then that could be the end of the chapter. So then, in the lead up to the referendum, in the Assyrian town, the Malazada family ousts the Assyrian mayor and replaces him with a Malazada family member. That could be its own chapter. And then Trevor arrives at the girl's hometown, I guess. And I don't know exactly how I'll do it, like if, her father is the mayor or what, but I'm kind of thinking maybe she's kind of just involved in the politics. So, there's the I feel like I'm being really ineloquent, if that's a word. Maybe he discovers that the girl is a member of an Assyrian political party? Question mark? An Assyrian delegate? Question mark? I don't know who that will be. Whether it will be like her, whether it will be the mayor himself, or if it'll be like, this girl's father, maybe? I kind of like that idea. An Assyrian delegate, question mark, maybe the girl's father, question mark, is to be sent to Baghdad to meet with the new prime minister and the vice president, the former prime minister. Could Trevor go with them? Oh, there's Nibbler. If he was to go to Baghdad, what was that scene about the Iranians? Where was that? High-level meeting between the Iranian military chief and Turkey's president. Okay, that's okay. I don't know. Maybe Trevor is kind of getting cozy with his girl. I don't know. I'm not sure if, he would actually, sleep with her, but maybe, he just kind of likes this woman. And, especially, after, Layla was, just killed, he may really be reluctant about sleeping with someone right now. But he wants to take care of this girl and make sure, she doesn't, come into harm. And otherwise, Trevor really doesn't know what to do or where to go, so he's just kind of going along with things, and he knows he likes this person, and he's still trying to figure out what's going on and where he should go and what he should do. The next chapter could be the Iranian military chief of staff. So I already have the Iranian commander guy right here, Iranian general. So it could be that guy goes to meet with the Iranian general Trevor met in Act 1. One goes to, was it Ankara? In Ankara. Goes to Ankara to meet with Beati, and together they agree that strong opposition. Together they agree to strongly oppose the referendum. So I think that's okay. Just a kind of a quick chapter showing that both Iran and Turkey are against this. So then we have more councils voting yes or no. If that girl, the Assyrian girl, is a real devoted member of the party, she could kind of be wanting to go around, campaigning for this stuff, but I don't think Trevor would go with her, if she's trying to stop this referendum. Trevor wouldn't want to join her. Trevor kind of supports the referendum, so I don't think Trevor would be helping with that. And then you have this governor in Kirk, Kurdish governor, deciding that, while all the Kurds are replacing Assyrian mayors and stuff, all the Kurds are pushing for independence. This one guy in Kirkuk, the Iraqi government, says, okay, nope, you got to go. We're not going to let you vote for this referendum. And so he says no. So that could be an excuse for Trevor to go down to Kirkuk. And maybe that guy, he's not part of the Malazada family. Maybe he's, the other political party. But exactly why would Trevor do that? Why would he go down there? Maybe, what I was going to say is if Trevor is going on that delegation down to Baghdad, Kirkuk is on the way, but why would Trevor go to Baghdad? Why would he go to that delegation? Maybe it could be something like that girl, she wants Trevor to, maybe she's curious about a relationship with him and he's, kind of turns her down. Maybe he could be working his way back up to the airport because maybe he could be, maybe he doesn't know where he's going to go. Maybe he's going to go back to Syria. Maybe he's thinking he could go back to Maine. Maybe he's thinking he may go somewhere else in the world. So maybe Trevor, I'll just write it down. Together, they agree to strongly oppose the referendum. Okay, so the Assyrian girl, I guess that's what she is now, questions Trevor about starting a relationship, but he, I guess, just rejects her offer, though he wishes her well. I don't know, that's silly. But yeah, he's just, he's not really in the mood for that. So then I could say Trevor heads to the airport uncertain about where to go or what to do and is approached by Firat. So maybe Firat could say like, hey, Trevor, we've been looking for you. Maybe, in fact, Trevor was supposed to stay at that guy's house. As far as they're concerned, Trevor is still on good terms with them. And Trevor does like that guy, Firat. So Firat could say like, hey, do you want to go down to Kirkuk because there's problems in Kirkuk? But then would Trevor really want to go with him? I know Trevor likes this guy Firat. I kind of wanted to get Malik involved more, but maybe not Malik Malazada. He's kind of the heir apparent. But if Firat wanted to go down to Kirkuk, why would Trevor go with him? What would he be trying to accomplish? Because Trevor's not at this point going to want to fight the Iraqi military. He does support the Kurds, but he's kind of really iffy right now about the Malazada family. He could just agree to go down there, but then what do they do there? Okay, alternate idea. Instead of he is approached by Firat, I am thinking instead, what if Trevor is actually approached by the Iranians? So in Act 1, I won't scroll up to it, but there's, there's the main Iranian general that Trevor meets with in Baghdad. But he is currently, I think, still somewhere talking up with Turkey, maybe? When did they have their scene? This scene here can't be that Iranian general. He would not be back from Turkey yet at this point. But what I'm thinking is the actual special forces, the Iranian special forces who rescues the satire team from the Mosul refinery, whoever commands that team could be the one to approach Trevor, is approached by Iranian Special Forces Commander. I guess that could be the end of a chapter because that's a pretty suspenseful chapter. They could kind of threateningly approach him. So he's like, uh-oh, what's going on now? I'd kind of like to go to a different chapter, a different character. I'm not sure if I have one. I mean, potentially it could be this Assyrian delegate guy who goes to Baghdad, but I don't have any kind of storyline arc for him. So I guess for now I'll just keep it with Trevor. So the Iranian Special Forces commander approaches Trevor, and then the Iranians, I don't know how to word this exactly. The Iranians ask Trevor to speak with, I don't know his name, Raybaz Malazada, who is Malik's father. He is currently like the president of the Kurdistan regional government or whatever, and encourage him to cancel the upcoming referendum vote because of the harm it would do to the stability of Iraq and the region. So basically what Iran is going to say is that if the Kurds in Iraq vote for independence, then the Kurds in Iran will also likely push for independence as well, and Iran will have to crack down on them, which they did do. So, like here, I think, yeah, so like there's demonstrations that's in Belgium, but I mean there's in the Kurdish cities of whatever, so there's several cities in Iran that are largely Kurdish, like it may be that town there, Sanadaj, was that one of them? Sanadaj, yeah. So there's like several Kurdish towns and stuff in western Iran, and if Iraqi Kurds vote for independence, the Iranian Kurds could decide like, yeah, let's go independent too, and Iran can't tolerate that. And that's the whole point of like Act 1. Iran wants Iraq to stick together. And so if the Iranian Kurds push for independence as well, Iran's going to have to crack down on them. Also, if the Iraqi Kurds go independent, the Kurds in Turkey will want independence as well, and Turkey will crack down violently on that. So basically the Iranians tell Trevor like, hey, you have to do all you can to get the Malazada family to back down from this referendum because it's going to cause a lot of problems in the region. And Trevor could kind of be thinking like, well, I don't care if, Iran and Turkey doesn't like this. The Kurds should be independent. But, maybe they could tell him like, hey, if all these different Kurdish towns start pushing for independence, it's going to cause a lot of problems, and there's going to be a lot of repression. We're going to have to get rid of all these Kurdish mayors, and it's not going to be good for the Kurds. Right now, the Kurds have a good deal of freedom and independence in some of these places and in Iraq. And what they're also going to remind Trevor is there's still ISIS to deal with. ISIS is still in control of everything from like Palmyra to Raqqa. They have like 50% of Syria, and they're still in Mosul and everything. So ISIS is still, strong, and ISIS could still take over. So the last thing they need is Iraq like fracturing. So what they need to be doing is still keeping the focus on ISIS. And Trevor will kind of like agree with that in spirit, but he really likes the Kurds and he's really thinking, these people should be independent. But, maybe they do kind of convince him that right now isn't the best time for independence. Maybe, we should keep focusing on ISIS. We need to defeat ISIS first. So, maybe Trevor does kind of, at this point, kind of very reluctantly agree that, okay, I understand, this could create problems. And really what changes his mind is when they tell him we need to keep the focus on ISIS, because Trevor hates ISIS. So Yeah, I mean, maybe he could still be thinking, he wants the Kurds to be independent, but maybe not right now. Trevor doesn't care about the possible ramifications. Is it just one M? But is more persuaded when the Iranian tells him that the focus should be on defeating ISIS. Trevor agrees to speak with Ray-Baz. So then I guess, again, I could maybe want to have another chapter. I kind of like, switching characters between chapters, but I'm not sure, who it would go to. So I really feel, there's still a lot of chapters to go through here. And there's a lot of characters I'd like to, maybe create, but it's not so important right now. I could kind of improvise for a lot of this. I just want to make sure the, nuts and bolts of it is right. So I'll just say Trevor goes back to the Malazadas and expresses his concerns about independence at this time. Oh, I think it will be on the same night, because I'm thinking maybe the vote is the next day. The voting begins the next day. On the same night, Trevor goes back to the Malazadas and expresses his concerns about independence at this time, with ISIS still being a threat, but the Malazadas are insistent about independence. So it's actually like flipping what I was going to do, because originally Trevor was going to be pushing them for independence. But instead, I think what's actually happening is it's really like a switch around, where instead of Trevor pushing the Kurds to go independent, the Iranians kind of persuade him that maybe now is not exactly the right time for this. And there could be a lot more to it, like maybe Trevor does call his dad, and his dad, the senator, like says the same thing, like, ISIS is the threat right now. We don't want Iraq splitting into several countries. And, his father could also tell him, like, the Iranian Kurds have a good degree of independence already. So if they begin revolting, then that would only be bad for them. And so even though Trevor kind of thinks like any kind of revolting in Iran would be a good thing, because it'd be, the Iranian government having a weaker position, his father could also tell him, like, it doesn't mean it's going to be a good thing, because it could mean, a lot of Kurds in Iran could be arrested or killed. So, but the Malazadas are insistent about independence. And then I guess the next chapter would be the referendum begins. I really don't have anything too much that Trevor would be doing at this time. And even though historically the referendum lasted several days. Thank you, baby. Let's see here. Does it actually... Thank you, baby. Okay, I guess it was held on one day, maybe. So that's good. I was kind of worried it would take place over a few weeks historically. But nope. Okay, so it's one day the referendum begins. I don't know what Trevor could be doing all this time, so I'll just do what is Trevor doing? ? That's just something I could really fill in on the spot. I don't really need to plan that too much. It's not really essential. The referendum begins. At the end of the day, the referendum is approved, and voters agree overwhelmingly to have Kurdish independence. Okay, so then the next thing I guess would be Iraqi. Would I have a whole chapter about like the Iraqi president or whatever? I'll just say the Iraqi government declares the referendum void and dispatches the military to retake key areas of Kurdistan. Now that the vote has actually taken place, does Trevor become like fully on board with this? I don't know exactly how to word this, but the first target is Kirkuk. Okay, where the Kurdish governor refuses to surrender his office. The Sunni general is sent to the city to retake it by force. Okay, now I think because of that, Trevor he's thinking, all right, well, they voted for independence, so it is what it is. So maybe then I could also have Kurdish towns in Turkey and Iran protest in support of the result of the referendum leading to crackdowns. I guess that's okay. I don't exactly know how I'll do this chapter because I don't know like which point of view character I'll do. I mean, maybe it could be something as simple as like Stephen Knight could be like reading about it or watching it on the news. Stephen Knight, the senator. Anyway, there's lots of different countries where they don't like what's going on. So, I could have this chapter from any number of perspectives where someone could just be reading in the news or watching the news about this. I don't know. That's not really too important. Mainly, I just want to have a chapter breaking stuff up. So, what I'm thinking next, I guess, would be Trevor. Where is Trevor? Is he in Kirkuk yet? The first target is Kirkuk. What is Trevor doing? I don't know. Trevor goes to Kirkuk. I may have some better explanation for why he does that or how he gets there. Like maybe Firat goes there because Firat is in control of the Kurdish special forces. So maybe Firat is on his way down to Kirkuk because that mayor is refusing to step down, or governor, or whatever he is. So maybe they know the military is on the way, so the Kurds are going down to Kirkuk to defend the city, and so maybe Trevor goes there with him. And I could have conversation anywhere here where Trevor can kind of question the wisdom of going independent, but he largely agrees with it. He thinks they should be independent. He goes to Kirk. I don't know if he necessarily goes there to fight, but maybe he just goes down there because Firat is going down there. I don't know. These are kind of small details. He goes to Kirk. Then I don't know exactly how I want to show this because basically the Kurds really, kind of back down quickly. Baghdad-backed forces facing no resistance. So they go to take Kirkuk and the Kurds just flee. In light of avoiding the escalation, so basically the Malazadas would agree to freeze the referendum. But that's 10 days later. So what I think happens is Trevor goes to Kirk. Then I'll do with Firat, ? Again, in this whole act, I really want to have a lot more characters introduced, like a lot more of the Malazada family, a lot more of the Assyrians, the other Kurdish political parties and all that. But I don't want to like really go in depth here, like, how to exactly introduce every one of them. But I definitely do want to introduce them. But those are kind of things that I could come up with on the spot. So I don't want to like exactly have, the whole like, cast of characters all, in here. I know that I want to have a lot of different characters and have the different political parties and all that. It'll be pretty chaotic. But anyway, so Trevor goes to Kirk with Firat to defend against possible Iraqi military attack. The attack comes, but there is no resistance by the Kurds. I really have an idea. It was one of my very first ideas, even before I thought of doing Babylon Dithers so much. In Syrian Dander, in the Siege of Kobane, there is a Kurdish fighter named Yaktan Ala-al-Din. I'll just see if I can spell it. Yaktan Ala-al-Din. And he is a Iraqi Kurd, and he winds up getting killed in the Kobane siege. Where's Kobane? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So what I was going to do is that guy, Yaktan, Trevor, like when they meet, they really do not get along, but they kind of wind up becoming friends because that guy, he's an Iraqi Kurd. He initially does not like Americans because the Americans have kind of screwed over the Iraqi Kurds quite a bit in history. But that guy kind of, grows to respect Trevor, and Trevor, likes that guy. And so what I wanted to do when I kind of began thinking about Babylon Dithers is Trevor goes to Iraq and he actually meets that guy's family. And so Trevor thinks this guy, this al-Din, his family, is great. They're warriors. They're defenders of, the Kurdish people. But then he finds out that guy's father is actually like, I don't want to say necessarily a coward, but the father does not like respect or appreciate what his son did. He thinks his son kind of just threw his life away for nothing. And especially like he fought and died protecting Syrian Kurds. So it's like, his son died protecting Kurds in Syria. It's like, why? That's just a waste. And so that guy, Yaktan al-Din's father, he's just doesn't appreciate his son. He thought his son died for nothing. And so what Trevor was going to do was he was going to meet that guy's family and initially think like, oh, I like this family, I'm in good with him. But then he finds out that guy's family is essentially cowards, they're not like for Kurdish independence. And so what Trevor was going to do was he was going to try to like get that family to fight. Originally, it was either going to be to fight ISIS or to fight for independence, when the Iraqis are pushing against the referendum, but they don't want to do that. And so Trevor is just trying to implore this family, like, come on, stand up for yourselves, stand up for your people. And they just don't do it. They don't want to fight. And what was originally going to happen, I thought, was, Trevor would call these people traitors, basically, these Kurds, this family. He would say, you're traitors to your race, you're refusing to fight and you're cowards. And, Trevor at that point, he has lost like all respect for the Iraqi Kurds because they finally go independent. And then as soon as the Iraqis go to attack, the Kurds just give up. And so Trevor he is so frustrated, like, why aren't you guys fighting? And so it would mainly be this one family, the al-Din family, where Trevor was going to, really kind of scold them. And so I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to do it, but one idea was that like a boy who is like maybe Yekton Aldine's like younger brother, like maybe he's just like 10 years old or something. Maybe that boy was going to like be willing to join Trevor, and Trevor would be like, no, go back to your dad, because, he doesn't want this 10-year-old boy fighting. And then seeing his boy, like 10-year-old boy, wanting to fight, and his boy now kind of thinks that him, the father, is a coward because, Trevor has kind of, scolded him. So the father sees the boy wanting to join Trevor, just like, Yekton was. And because of it, kind of out of sympathy for his boy, the father was going to join Trevor and, maybe like push against Mosul or fight for the Mosul Dam or whatever. That was kind of my original idea. But since I didn't like include any of that yet in the book, I could still have Yekton's family be introduced now. But there is no resistance by the Kurds in Kirkuk. So I'm just going to have this be a new chapter where I don't know. Again, there's so many details here that I'm not like filling in because I would just have to think forever about that. And they're kind of smaller details, like how does Trevor meet this, family or whatever? How does he recognize them? Whatever. Oh, I just thought, could the mayor or the governor of Kirkuk be the Aldine? So Trevor could be like, hey, do you know Yekton by any chance? So yeah, that's how I could do it. That's how I could work that family in. Where the Kurdish governor, then I'll just do question mark Aldine's father, question mark, refuses to surrender his office. So then I could have Trevor meets with Aldine, the governor of Kirkuk. Wow, I spelled it right. To implore he and the Kurds fight for their independence, but the Kurds are unwilling. Trevor scolds them, saying they are traitors to their race. I really like the idea of the boy, the youngest son of the governor. I'll just say 10 years old. Offers to join Trevor in the fight, but Trevor tells the boy to rejoin his father. Basically, that was going to be it, I think, if the guy doesn't join Trevor, Trevor just leaves. I mean, he's done. His part in this is done. So I think that would be it, which is well short of, my 20 chapters per act. Is it? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, well, I mean, it's 15 chapters. Act 3 is somewhere like 14 chapters, I think. And then Act 1 and Act 2 are both like 20 chapters, or roughly thereabouts. But, again, I could like fill in things very easily. I could come up with chapters here or there. I could come up with entire storylines. So, I mean, that's really not a problem. Like other previous outlines I've done, like originally for Egyptian Demise, I did a whole outline for it. And the whole book wound up being 52,000 words. And the final draft wound up being 152,000 words. So like for the second draft of the book, I added 100,000 words to the book, which is like, 200 pages or something extra. So even though the outline for the first draft is 71 chapters, that would probably wind up being somewhere in the vicinity of like 130,000 words or so. Maybe a little bit shy of what I would like. I'd probably like it to be somewhere around 150,000 to 175,000 words, roughly. Once I add storylines and, I create characters, that girl, the Assyrian girl, nothing's ever happened with her. Like, I haven't had any chapters with her. Baby. So, maybe I'll have another chapter with her. Maybe, baby. Maybe I'll have a whole storyline with her where, thank you, where, I include that girl more. Or, thank you. There's so many characters in the book where I could really develop them more. There's, thank you, babe. There's more Malazada families. There's the Kurdish president, the one guy, what's his name? Salani. I haven't really introduced him in the story at all. I really haven't done much of anything with him at all. There's the Hilmi family, which I haven't touched on whatsoever. So there's so many things in the book where I could add details and I could pad, the word count, and I could add storylines and characters I've just completely forgotten about, or characters I want to keep in the story, or just expanding the book. Originally I mentioned I had an idea for Trevor siding with the Russians. I totally haven't touched on that at all, and I'm not sure if I'll do anything for that. There's all these different regional countries who would be, interested in what's going on in Iraq, and I just really haven't touched on them at all. There's Asajala in Saudi Arabia, I could have scenes with him. There's so many scenes I could, throw in that, right at this moment, I just can't really think of that. I can't just think of every little scene to add. The main thing is getting all the parts correct. So, essentially, I think I got most of the parts correct. I'm not sure if I really like the outline for Act 4, because it just seems kind of a little anticlimactic, because Trevor, he goes to help the Malazadas, and then the girl is they're a bad family. But, not a whole ton happens because of that. You don't really see how they're a bad family. You don't see how they're corrupt. And I really wanted to show that, to show how corrupt this family is. And I just don't. The only way you hear they're corrupt is from this one girl saying that they murdered her brother. That's the only way you hear that this family is corrupt. Another thing is I wanted to show that this family is really self-serving. They're only interested in their own power. They're a very corrupt family. I really want to stress that. But I have not shown it. The only thing you've seen from this family is that Firat is, he's a fighter. He's worked to save Baghdad. The Kurds have showed up in Mosul to help, retake the Mosul Dam. They showed up in Sinjar to help them, the Yazidis. And so it seems like, just reading the outline, that the Malazada family is actually good. They're pushing for independence. And that's completely not what I wanted to do. I wanted the Malazada family to be the opposite. They're only interested in their own family. They're only interested in their own power. So I really did not convey that as well as I wanted to in the outline. But those are things I could work into the book more. So when I just introduce more of these family members and, what their real motives are. But just looking at the outline, it just looks like they're pushing for independence, which is something Trevor would like for them to do. So there is so much with the outline that doesn't really mesh with my idea for the book, my ideas for the book, about how the Kurds in Iraq are just really problematic. And that's the whole part of the title, Babylon Dithers. The Kurds in Iraq just are so indecisive. So the outline doesn't really show that as much as I'd like, but I know when I write the book, I want to show that as much as possible. So even though it doesn't appear in the outline, in each of these chapters, I'm going to be trying to stress that. I'm going to be showing how the Malazadas are corrupt, how they have their own interests, how other Kurdish families are in competition with them and they are pursuing their own interests as well and they are corrupt as well, and on and on. But I just can't work all those details into the outline, but I know I want to have them. So yeah, just reading the outline, you don't really get the whole idea about why it's Babylon Dithers, why the Kurds are indecisive. They look pretty decisive. They keep kind of running away from ISIS, especially in Iraq, and then they run away from the Iraqi military. But otherwise, it seems like they genuinely don't like ISIS and they do want independence. But yeah, those are just things I'm going to have to actually include when I actually do the writing, is to show more in the book, in the actual writing, the dysfunction of all these people and just why they're so problematic for Trevor. How he wants them to be independent and he wants them to fight. And it just seems like they just keep resisting him in different ways. So yeah, I'm definitely going to have to figure out more ways to stress that in the book. But other than that, I think it's pretty well set. So I think the outline is pretty well done. And again, just want to say it one more time, there is so much that I'm probably missing and so much I'll create on the spot. And that's the way I write. The outline is more of a guideline than an actual rule. Oh man, what am I doing here? Oh God, what did I do? The outline just helps me so I don't completely lose my way. When I write a chapter, after writing this one chapter, for instance, I may write 3 whole new chapters after this, just squeezing stuff in that, I didn't plan on. Because of whatever I write in those chapters, it might affect some of the later chapters, and I'll just have to work with that. But for the most part, it will kind of stay roughly the same, maybe, unless I decide to just take it in a completely different direction. But generally, I try to avoid that because I don't want to deviate too much from the outline unless I figure out when I start writing that something just plainly does not work. But just as I'm writing, I may see that, oh, there's a massive plot hole that I completely didn't see. Maybe in the outline, I have a character make a decision that when I write the book, I realize that character would never make that decision. So in that case, I do deviate from the outline. And the way I like to say it is, in the outline, if I have a character going right, but then when I start writing it, I realize they would never go right, they would go left, I always have them go left. So the outline could be changed, it could be deviated from. I'm not too concerned about that. But generally, I try to kind of, keep it together. But anyway, I think that's plenty enough. This video is probably going to be 3 hours long. So I better end it now. But yep, I think that is it for the outline for Babylon Dithers. So I don't know exactly what to say about it, if I'm very happy with it or not, or if it's pretty much what I expected or what, but it's an outline. So it's just kind of just the skeletal shape of what the novel could be. Anyway, I think that is it. So I think what I might do next is actually show maybe a video of me actually writing the book. I don't know exactly how much of this book is written, but I think where I left off, Trevor was just beginning to go on the weapons delivery, which would be right here. I don't know if I had him arrive in the town, which I think is going to be to Crete. So yeah, I think I'm probably somewhere right around here, but there's definitely scenes that I probably need to touch on and rewrite and everything. And yeah, so I'll pretty much start from the very beginning and rewrite it as I go. So I think the next video I may show you guys for this series or whatever will be actually writing, show you guys how that works. And I don't know exactly how we'll do it, whether I'll talk or whether I'll just type. I may do a little bit of both. I may kind of, talk and type, but for some parts I may just write. So you could just hear the typing of the keyboard. Anyway, that is it for this video. So thank you guys for watching. If anyone did, I really don't think anyone is going to watch this video whatsoever, much less watch the whole thing. Mainly, I just made this video for myself so I could, figure out the outline. Because if I just sat in my computer trying to do the outline, I'd probably never do it. So anyway, that is it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you in another video. Bye.
2, 3, 4.